Man, I miss hearing that.
I can tell you one time, don't want it with us. I can tell you one time, that we'll fuck you up. I can tell you one time, don't grab your guns. I'll tell you one time, this day belongs to us. Why?
Oh my God. Hang on. There we go. Hello! And welcome to the War Room. And yes, the layout is slightly twisted, a little different. I couldn't get it to line up right, so I did the picture that way. Anyway, we did do a show after New Year's, so I don't have to say Happy New Year's. What I can tell you, though, is because of Sunday, Kong Hei Fat Choi, which is Chinese Lunar New Year, which is Sunday, which happens to be the year of the rabbit, my mother's year, strangely enough. Although she's now residing in my living room, whining and complaining profusely tonight for whatever reason, because I'm not giving her any attention, because I don't have time for her crap. All she does is drain my resources, among a few other things. So anyway, what do I want to talk about before we get started? SHOT Show is in full swing. The ATF is in full retard mode. We will talk about that slightly towards the end of the show tonight. I also appear to have a full panel in the green room, which is great. Although I did have to put somebody in timeout earlier because, look, there are certain things in life that cost money. And some things cost more money than you can afford. And if you can't afford them, it does not afford you the right to talk down about the things you can't have. Okay? There's only two things you can do in that situation. You can work harder and save the money and buy the nice things, or you can just say, it's nice, but it's too rich for my blood. But you don't go telling me and other people in my green room that it's not worth the asking price, because it most certainly is. Otherwise, they wouldn't have set it to that price, okay? If I want my four-wheel drive diesel Ram pickup truck, which I did buy, I just grit my teeth and I signed on the dotted line for far more money than I thought I should spend, okay? If you want those things in life, then do what you have to do to get them. Don't tell me that it's a bad thing to have them or they're not worth it. It was, because I got it for 20 grand less than it cost new. So we're not going to have that debate. And I'm not going to listen to people argue with me about that debate when they can't even buy the things that I own, let alone the things I want to own. We'll get into that because, in all honesty, there is still, as of right now, only one thing in SHOT Show that mattered to me, and that is the STG-44. It is back after so many years of vaporware bullshit from Hill and Mac. It is back because it is in the safe and more wealthier, deeper pocketed hands of Palmetto State Armory. And I'm so glad that they actually listened to people like me. Because years ago, I asked PSA, I said, would you please buy Hill and Max STG and bring that out to the market? Because we needs it. America needs it. There's a market for it. And guess what? They did it. It took a couple of years, but they did it. I'm not saying it's my doing. All I'm saying is I said something that probably many people said, and they found the way to do it. So now PSA is in the boutique market with a line called the Battlefield series. I own the genesis of that. I bought their RPK. That's kind of their genesis. They also brought out the Spiker, the Type 56. Yeah, that's part 2. Part 3, STG-44. I sent a message to somebody I know over there saying, does this mean I can see an FG-42 in a couple of years? And he sent me that little meme of the guy holding his temple like, So I thought, there's hope for us all. And then someone else said that the SVT, or SVD, is on the menu. And then Night Strike and Scott and I, we were mulling it over before the show, and apparently there's a bunch of stuff coming, like MP40s, and among other things. Hit me up when a PPSH is available. PPSH 41, that is. I'll take it in Tokarev. Wouldn't mind having it in 9, but I'll take it in Tokarev. Cool. Anyway, as I was saying, this is the War Room. We will touch on that. We will touch on House Resolution 374 because you need to know what that is. And you need to help get that across the finish line. We'll talk about it towards the end of the show because it's not about the war in Ukraine. But we'll talk about it. Anyway, today is day 3. Well, tonight is the night of day 331. If you are in the Ukraine, it is actually day 332 already. It's 3 a.m.-ish. 3:44 a.m.-ish over there. So there's that. Anyway, the theme tonight, we have several questions, and I think you'll probably notice that I wrote it in reverse order from newest to oldest from last week. Is Vladimir Putin dead? We'll also talk about the shell game of military arms for the United States, because we are playing the shell game of our hardware. We're moving pieces from South Korea, from Israel, from probably a couple other places to get them to Ukraine, because this is a global conflict and sometimes your inventory comes from different places across the globe. I have a rhetorical question we're going to ask. Is the Ukraine about to receive a metric shit ton of Merkava 4s? There's a joke involved. You'll see it. We'll talk about it. Ukraine's interior minister earlier this week was killed. It was an unfortunate accident. I don't believe it was a Russian strike or anything. Warsaw, it's cool, dude. It's okay. It'll be fine. We're going to be fine. That's why I didn't ban you. I just put you in timeout. It'll be fine. The interior minister died. It was a helicopter accident. We'll talk about that. Germany's defense minister has been shown the door. That mouthy little troll is gone. In Germany, that is. And Russia still believes that civilian apartment complex blocks are valid military targets. And yet, the world says nothing about it. Not really. Oh yeah, and we're going to talk about the pistol brace issue. We're going to talk about House Resolution 374. And we're going to talk about hypocrisy. Global hypocrisy. Well, United States governmental hypocrisy against us, the American people. We'll get to that. It'll be like a closing segment. Anyway, before I get into too long of an intro, let me go ahead and bring in my panelists. So my first panelist is Mikhail Knightstrikesky. Good evening, sir.
Yet, I didn't do it.
You didn't do it yet.
I did not do it. Not yet.
Next is Scott P79. Good evening to you, sir. Who's currently holding Tufu and a couple of his friends hostage with hardware that they want that they can't have. And long lost but found, future State Department and Ukraine specialist, and possibly the replacement to Rebecca Koffler. This is Jaime Zaporizhia.
Hello.
Zaporizhia. So good evening to you, sir.
Your accent is kind of going downhill, but okay.
I'm powered by Scotland tonight, so.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah, I can't be Russian when I was drinking Scottish, so.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I mean, we can be Russian because we're not Russian, but okay.
Can't be Ruski when you're drinking Scotch. That's just the way it is. Anyway, we do actually have quite a bit to get through, but I mean, if you guys have anything you want to share before we get started, things that happened to you since New Year's and since our last episode, feel free. Go ahead and shoot from the hip before we get started.
Well, we were discussing the SHOT Show stuff going on. You want to go over some of that, Sean?
I was kind of holding that to the end, just so we can get through the war part first. But yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that.
Okay. I don't know. Any update on your truck?
Yes, it's more or less done.
It's a truck.
No, it's more or less done. It's I didn't mention it earlier.
Does it run?
Is it done now? Is it now done drivable, or is it done? You have a $40,000 paperwork.
It's done drivable.
Okay. All right.
Now I just have to cough up $5,300. Yeah. What started off as $14,800 got reduced down to $3,400, which crept up to $4,400, which is now $5,300. But I did receive a video of my truck idling in the service bay, and I thought,
did they at least give you a reach around?
no. And I really don't want to bang the service writer. It's just not my flavor. Like, I could have a drink with her.
A little too thick for you?
No, it's not that. It's too pasty. It's just like, it's the type of person I could sit down at a bar and have a drink and punch her in the arm, and she can punch me back in the arm, and we can just, shoot the shit and make fun of everybody in the place. She's one of those types. Don't.
So she's May.
Yeah, but if
without being, lesbian.
See, the thing is if with enough drinks, May could be a thing. This chick, not so much. Just not my thing. Not my thing. Anyway, actually, since you brought up May, there's one thing that always bugged me about her. For some reason, when she turns her head just so on camera, I see Alexander Hamilton's face. I do. I don't know what it is. She just has classic features on her face. That's what it is. Bearded guy is asking me what happened to my truck. Okay, so I guess I didn't really explain it very well. I bought it back in September after researching the kind of truck I wanted for 3 years. I wanted a Ram. I wanted a diesel. I wanted a Cummins, but I really couldn't afford a Cummins. Not really. Not with the maintenance on front-end parts that it needs every 60,000 miles. But I would have bought one if the price is right. So I settled for what I jokingly call it the pasta diesel. It's a 3.0 liter Via Motari. They call it the Eco Diesel here in the United States. Before anyone makes fun of the Italian diesel, let me just stop you now, because the Chevrolet 4-cylinder Duramax diesel is also a VM Motari engine. So let's just get that out of the way now. Anyway.
Hold up. I also want to make an indication.
Uh-huh.
Remember, Lamborghini was originally a tractor company.
Sure.
Okay.
Anyway. So I bought it, and I drove it for about 10, 11 weeks. About 2 months or so. I was still in the honeymoon phase and the shakedown phase, right? So I did the basics. I checked the belts and hoses. I changed the oil. I changed the filter. I reset the computer. Basic bullshit. I also know that these things have EGR systems where the exhaust system soot gets rammed back down the intake manifold, which could lead to premature wear and total destruction. So I took the EGR system apart, I cleaned everything, inspected it. It was actually quite clean in there. Put it back together. It was running fine. Uh, One day I drove it to work, started it up, ran fine, drove it all the way to work, backed it into my parking space like I did every day before, shut it off, went inside.
It was
A
fine.
little over 8 hours later, I get back in it, twist the key, nothing. The starter would just run away. So I had to shut it back off. And I noticed I had no fuel pump. So I took my forklift, I hooked a chain up to it, dragged my truck inside the shop, behind the gate, and I left it there for the weekend. And I'm like, it's okay. I'll call roadside assistance or whatever and have them come pick it up and take it to the dealer. They got it. It was before Christmas. They couldn't work on it because they were booked solid for like the next 2 weeks. They said they'd call me when they found out something. Long story short, they hit me with an estimate of almost 15 grand. They said that whoever owned the truck before me never, ever changed the fuel filter. Not even once. It was the original one since the truck that was built. It's 2016, by the way. It had swollen, it had come apart, and it had completely fucked the entire fuel system. $14,800. I told them, that's bullshit, but you can take it up with my extended warranty people. They denied my claim, saying that the filter is a maintenance item and it's negligence and they're not covering it. The dealership and the service writer and the mechanic all appealed to those people saying, look, this happened way before he got this thing. Like, look at the mileage of when he got it. Look at the mileage of when we're reporting it to you. And they said, not our problem. So I sent them a legal letter of intent saying, I paid you for this service. You're not going to do this service. You have 90 days to send me a check for the amount I paid for this service, or I will take this way higher than this dollar amount because you guys are full of shit. Meanwhile, I'm still on the lam. So now we're replacing parts on my truck one at a time until we get it running. I now have a new high pressure fuel injector pump on the engine. I have a new fuel filter housing and heater and filter. I have a new electric lift pump with the sock. The tank has been cleaned. The lines have been flushed. The only thing left are the injectors and the actual fuel lines themselves. But by the grace of dog, it starts and runs. So I don't need lines and I don't need injectors. And even if I did, I would not let the dealership change them because
You can
they
do those yourself.
wanted 50% more for one than the entire price of 6 injectors I could buy brand new from Bosch. So if the injectors had to be replaced, I said, I will do that myself. You can kiss my ass. Anyway, I am now on the lam for $5,300. And yes, the dealership did nickel and dime me because they just kept tacking on and ones. And I'm just like, I don't know where you think people come from where they can do this on a financial level like this. So,
Oil families.
well, the dealership is in a very affluent neighborhood that I had intended to move over to once I sold my house, but a lot of that didn't pan out. So it's just like, I'm not of that income level. Not very many people are. Anyway, that's the long and short. I'm probably going to pick it up like Tuesday or Wednesday at the latest because I've got to cough up $5,300 that I don't have yet. And I have several of my firearms for sale. So if you're interested, you can PM me in my Discord server because I cannot talk about it on air and I can't really talk about it anywhere else. So if you're really interested in what I have to sell and you want to buy something, PM me in my Discord. The link is in the description of this video. Trust me, the things I have for sale are quite valuable. So if you are looking for something kind of fancy and exclusive that's worth a lot of money, I'll work with you. But let me just tell you, most of the stuff I have for sale starts at $2,000. Just telling you now. I'm getting it all out of the way. But it will come fully loaded. I'll just give you an example. KP9 full Zenitco furniture with the brace, with an EOTech, with the PEC 15 with a light and the IR laser. $2,000. 6 magazines in a hard shell case. Now you got the idea what I'm doing. That's just for starters. I also have, Walther Q5 steel frame Match Pro with the Trigicon SRO, $2,000, because it comes with 3 weighted mags and all that good shit. So now you get the idea. If I could sell those 2 guns only, then most of my problems are solved. If I could sell a couple of the other ones on my list, then the truck gets a lift and bumpers and a winch and some lights and a transfer tank and then 37-inch tires. Then I'm done. But that's later.
I can make an offer on that Springfield.
Yeah, maybe. We'll talk later. I'm not attached to that. You know that.
Yeah, I know. That's why I said that.
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and get started because now you're all caught up. And that's kind of why most of my content has been not really coming out. Like the Penny Arcade things that I do on Sundays, the Kicking It Old Schools, I pre-recorded a lot of those ahead of time. Yeah. And they're easy for me to record and edit. That's the only reason I've been able to stick with those. I have been meaning to record every milsurp on my wall. It's really hard to get your head in the right place when you're constantly worried about where you're going to come up with $5,000. So
we need to do some more Valheim streaming.
I've been playing Valheim every day this week. I don't know where the hell you've been.
I've been busy. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, you want to do these things. I've been doing these things.
I know, but you haven't been doing them live on YouTube.
No, I only did that the one time.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe
you want to do it again?
Yeah.
All right, we'll talk about it. I don't mind.
All right.
There's really nothing to do until the next update, though.
There is one thing that was released, that SHOT Show, I do want to mention because I saw it and it makes me hopeful for some cheaper ammo. Not too cheap, but just cheaper 5.7 at least.
Go on.
PSA sister company. It's owned by JJE. AAC Ammo. You know them, right?
Yes.
They finally let the cat out of the bag, even though they've been posting on the PSA forums, teasers with images of the box for months now. They have finally said we are in production of the AAC 5.7 ammo, and they are going to be coming to the market soon.
Very nice.
Do you know what I liked better that they were showing off?
792 by 33.
No, Scott liked the fact that not only do they have the Rock, but they're coming out with a compact version of the Rock.
No, I wasn't going to go there. I was actually sticking with ammunition.
Okay.
They were showing off pictures of Soviet arms ammunition.
I thought I saw that.
Yeah, the new steel case 7.62 by 39, right?
Yes.
Yes. So we might be getting some affordable 7.62 by 39 back.
I'm cool with that. I'm totally cool with that. But I need to know 792 by 33. If they do that, we were talking about this before we went on, right? I guess we're going to talk about this first. We'll get to this part first because SHOT Show's the newest thing.
Love him, hate him. Mac alluded to it in the ARFCOM video of the STG-44. So it may be either Soviet arms that might be doing it, or it may be AAC that does it.
That'd be great. I mean, okay, PPU makes it, but it's available.
But it's gonna be down the line after they release the STG-44.
It's fine.
Yeah.
As long as I know it's coming. Because right now, the caliber decision hinges upon my ammo availability. Right now, I can find PPU ammo all day long. It's almost the same price as 7.6239. Like, I can get it for about $10 a box. I can live with that.
You'd be happier with it in 7.62 by 39 than you would.
Probably. But
just
the die set's out there. The brass is out there. I have load tables for it.
I know. It would just be easier to use 7.62 by 39.
Agreed. And that's probably what I'll buy it in.
How easily it's out.
That's probably what I'll buy it in. However, if AAC makes it, and PPU has it, and I can get the brass for it, I'm not opposed to it.
Right.
But realistically, I think we talked about it earlier this week. I want it in 30 cal. I originally wanted it in 300 blackout. However, the problem is 300 Blackout's base diameter is small compared to 7.6239. I
Well,
want it
Yeah,
to
it's
be
based off
roughly
5.56.
exactly.
It-
So I want it roughly in the same physical shape as a 7.92.
if
So
you
chances
watch,
are we're going the AK round.
if you watched the ARFCOM video that they did, where they did an interview with Mac, because apparently Hill and Mac got bought out by PSA on this endeavor.
Yes.
As far as I know.
Yes.
And Mac was saying that they're still making them. They're gonna make them in the Kurs. They're gonna make them in 7.62 by 39. They're gonna make them in 5.56 and 300 Blackout.
Yes.
But here's the kicker: the magazine is going to be the same profile no matter which caliber.
Right.
And
It's a Stanag pattern magazine with a STG 44 profiled shape.
Exactly.
And I'm perfectly happy with that.
Yeah.
You know what that means?
Go on.
They probably broke down and finally called fucking Mekar.
Ooh, you know,
Ooh.
I was about to shout the word Stanag, but you're right. That's probably who's making it. If it's not them, it might be
Because he does have the ability to
ASC.
make it in the house.
It could be ASC.
But-
Like I haven't had a bad one. Like steel mags, they're actually not bad at them.
So
Yeah, I'll stick with Israeli steel mags.
Yeah, like if they're
Right.
mech guards, that's fine. Like I haven't had a bad one of those
Oh.
either.
well, a lot of mags.
No, I've never had a bad Mekar.
A lot of mags I'm using right now are the South Korean contract AR-15 steel mags.
Who is that?
SHK
SHK.
is one of them, anyways.
SHK is one of them. There's another
I
one.
believe
There's
KCI
another
is
one.
making
They
them
use
too.
it's RWB.
Red, white, yeah, RWB.
Yeah, I've got a lot of their stuff. That works
Yeah,
fine.
I've got RWB.
I've
got
had issues with
SHK.
their stuff.
Can I
I
just
haven't
say
had
though,
issues.
if Hill and Mac were still in charge of the STGs,
They wouldn't be.
They still wouldn't be made.
no. I just have a funny feeling that they would be like, "We finally solved our magazine problems." Really? Yeah. Pro Mag will be making them for us. Like, fuck out of here.
Well, Pro Mag would be the lowest bidder for sure.
Yeah.
Well, let me be perfectly honest. I only own one Pro Mag or two of one Pro Mag magazine for one rifle. It's for my Enfield. The physical shape of it is not even close to what an original Enfield looks like. It has a very sharp baloney cut base. But the fucker works great. Even the sun will shine on a dog's asshole once a day.
Yeah, but do you know why? They patterned that off the wrong magazine.
Yeah, but the one that they
Have
made
you seen?
works.
Yeah, but have you seen? You've obviously seen the regular Enfield magazines.
I have them.
Have you seen the 308 pattern magazines?
Yeah, but they're flat based. Like you're talking about the 2A1, the floor plate on that one is flat, like horizontal, where the one on
Yep.
my number one Mark III, it's baloney cut at like 60 degrees. But yeah, you're right. The profile sort of kind of reminds you of it for sure. It's flat, but it's just this one's at an angle. Yeah, I almost bought a 2A1. I almost bought G-Web's 2A1, and if
I would.
I had the
buy
extra
one.
money, like if Mike twisted my arm just a little bit harder before I left, I would have bought his 2A1, but I think Foose bought it. That's
What do you
actually
mean
that's
twist,
why
twist your arm.
that's why I didn't buy it, because Foose already bought it. Now, if you twisted my arm a little bit harder, I would have went home with a Vetterli Vitali too.
Well, I told you. I
I
told you to
know.
go and get a better lead Vitali, and you're like, I don't really want to spend that much.
I wasn't
Does that
sure
have
I
to-
had enough money to drive home.
No, you were wishy-washy, and you didn't listen to Squib because Squib said just put it on the credit card. And you're like, I don't want to
didn't
put it on my
take
credit card.
there. Like everything was a cash deal. Especially that guy. It's fine.
Yeah,
I got one. I eventually bought one. I'm looking right at it.
yeah, and you yelled at me for pointing it out to you when it was on your list.
Nah. The thing I yelled about the most is the Apoca fucking police department. And their stupid 21 mile an hour speed limit bullshit. And their fucking
I thought.
garbage washboarded road.
There we go.
Oh, dude. Never, ever, ever drive in Oklahoma in a Fiat 500 ever. Not unless you like your spine. I drove the
Don't like
entire
your
way
spine.
home in the left lane. I was like, fuck it, they can ticket me. The ticket will be cheaper than my chiropractor bill. Oh, it was horrible. But the trip was great.
You should have used the T-Bird.
I didn't have it yet.
Should have used the 300.
Probably.
Did I have that yet? No, I didn't have
Yep.
that yet either. I didn't have that yet either. My dad didn't wreck my Volkswagen into my dad
Should have
didn't
taken the Volkswagen.
my dad didn't total my Volkswagen by smashing it into the side of the bar. That's a long story. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go back to day 325, which would have been last Saturday. And what I'll do typically is I read you the stories and then I'll let you guys chime in if you have opinions on this, because this is pretty good stuff this week, actually. So we're going to go Saturday, January 14th, day 325. That was 31 minutes of intro, by the way. We apologize. Not really.
Not really.
First picture. And I got to admit, those are some sexy looking tanks, man. The United Kingdom on Saturday pledged to send Ukraine tanks, while its capital city once again fell victim to missile strikes as heavy ground warfare continued in Ukraine's Donbass
Those are
region.
strikes with eyes, not wise.
With eyes. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, that's going to take some time for me to get used to, said that he would send Ukraine Challenger 2 tanks along with additional artillery systems following a Saturday call with Ukrainian President Zelensky. Those are Challenger 2s. Super sexy. They have a boiling vessel in the back so you can make tea. Anyway, the war has once again been ramping up, and both Russia and Ukraine look to bolster their forces and take control over the battlefield in the Donbass, where intense fighting continues along a 50-mile axis from Bakhmut to Soledar in Donetsk and Kremina in Luhansk.
Believe it or not, Russians and Ukrainians do like their tea.
Yeah. Well, really?
Yes, they like tea is they're not as fervent as the English are about tea, but they do drink tea a lot.
They also like whiskey.
Ross,
They like
No, I was about to say they also like vodka.
they like vodka, but when they have to do all business, it's usually tea.
Ross, ask Frida what kind of tea they like in Ukraine. I know you're in the chat, so just type it in there and I'll read it out.
Probably black.
We'll find out.
I would say either black or, I'm gonna say this just to piss Sean off, barley.
Just made my eye twitch. Anyway, according to a readout of the call, the British government said that the leaders agreed on the need to seize on this moment with an acceleration of global military and diplomatic support to Ukraine. Zelensky has long urged Western allies to send his troops to the east or on the East Front tanks, but in recent weeks those calls have been amplified, and partner nations like France and Poland have begun to answer those calls. Earlier this month, Paris pledged to send AMX-10 RC light tanks, which are pretty badass, by the way. And Warsaw, not the Patriot, the actual city, this week said that it would send its German-made Leopard 2 tanks to the war-torn region. Do you know why Poland said that they were going to send their Leopard 2s? Because Germany wouldn't commit. Germany is like, we are not sending our Leopard 2s. And Poland's like, fuck it, we'll do it. And now the Germans are like, ach mein Gott, now we look like assholes. So now we got a story about that too, actually.
The reason why they're not doing the Germans aren't doing it is because half of the eastern part of Germany are part Russian since
Still
the Cold War.
Not still. Anyway,
It's not they're one country again, but the problem is the eastern half are part Russian now.
They're not driving Trabants anymore. Hopefully. Hopefully.
Trabants.
Yeah, those cotton cars. Well, actually, you know what's funny is I'm making fun of Germany right now, but there's a reason I'm making fun of Germany right now. I have a story coming up. You'll see why, because they really did go ach mein Gott, and then they did something about it. Anyway, Polish President Andrzej Duda on Wednesday also said that he was in talks with allied nations to send additional tanks, but he didn't specify which nations he was referring to.
Ooh.
The U.S. has not yet committed to send tanks, though the Biden administration will send Bradley fighting vehicles. which it is argued will provide valuable which would prove valuable on the fluid war front. Truth be told, he's not
I,
wrong.
I've also heard we're sending strikers.
It's coming. I'll get
Yeah,
there.
I
But
heard
yes,
Striker
you're correct.
with a Y.
With a Y. With a Y.
Yes, with a Y.
In a $3
Yes.
billion drawdown package announced last week, the U.S. committed to sending 50 Bradley fighting vehicles, 100 APCs, 55 mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles, and 138 high-mobility multi-purpose wheeled vehicles. The chief differences between the Bradley fighting vehicle and the U.S. Abrams tank is its lighter armor and cannon ability. There's more than that, but we'll give you a pass for writing it that way. The chief differences between... Sorry, I read that. Though the tanks possess heavier armor and longer range firing power, they also transport fewer troops on the battlefield, so they're a little less readily and easily maneuverable. Kinda true. Germany last week said that it would also send Ukraine 40 combat vehicles and Patriot air defense missile systems, a sophisticated battery capable of taking down ballistic missiles. The U.S. has also pledged to train Ukrainian soldiers on the Patriot system and will send Kyiv one of its own batteries as well. That's already happened, by the way, and they already have guys here in the U.S. training on the systems at Fort Huachuca? No, Fort Sill, Oklahoma, I think it is. Both places my dad served at. It is unclear how fast the UK, France, or Poland can get tanks on Ukraine's front lines, but Washington said it would take a few months to get its vehicles over to Ukraine and get its fighters trained up on the U.S. systems. British Prime Minister told Zelensky that he and his government would work intensively to get the defensive aid promised by international partners delivered rapidly to best allow Ukraine to press their advantage, win this war, and secure a lasting peace. I promise that's the end of that story. But yes, Scott, you were right. Remember, I have to rewind back to last Saturday because we're playing the whole week. But yes, you're right. I'll touch on that very shortly. We do have a lot of other stuff going over there now. Same
Thing is,
Hmm?
they could have done it so much cheaper if they just made a deal with the Taliban.
Like, hey, Afghanistan, you know all that shit we left behind? You mind sending some of that over to Ukraine and saving us a couple thousand miles of transport? That'd be great, thanks.
Save us a few $1 billion.
That would be useful. Like, they're not using it anyway, right? Anyway.
They don't know how.
Exactly. All right, moving on. I have 3 stories that cover the same thing, but they span over, I think, 3 days. So bear with me. There's going to be a lot of overlap here, but it was one of the major stories of the week. So I'm going to start with this photo here because it's pretty telling. Dozens of Ukrainian civilians were injured and others trapped after Russia on Saturday struck a 9-story civilian apartment complex in Ukraine's central eastern city of Dnipro, located near the Zaporizhia border. In videos posted to social media, the screams of those trapped inside the demolished building reportedly rang out as dust filled the air and rescue teams worked to help victims that were caught in the attack. Now, remember, I'm giving you 3 stories, so these numbers are going to change between the 3. So by the time this one was written, at least 27 people were injured, including 6 children, and at least 2 people were killed in the attack. Valentin Reznichenko, regional governor of the Dnipropetrovsk region, also reported this on Telegram. He also said that all of those who had been recovered had been taken to hospital as searches in the debris removal continues. All services are currently working, he says, but we're fighting for every person and trying to save every life. An indeterminate number of missiles struck the building, partially wiping out the 2nd to 9th floors in the early evening local time. Ukrainian President Zelensky took to Twitter to condemn the attacks and said, "Eternal memory to all of those lives that were taken by Russian terror. World must stop evil," he continues, adding that debris removal was ongoing. All services are currently working. We're fighting for every person, for every life, and we'll find everyone involved in this attack. The attacks on Dnipro just came hours after air raid sirens rang out over Kyiv amid a heavy layer of fog as renewed rounds of missile strikes struck the capital after 2 weeks had passed without a single drone or missile strike. Ukrainian officials have said that civilian infrastructure had been damaged, but no casualties at the time were reported. Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said explosions were heard in the residential area of Dniprovsky district on the left bank of the Dnieper River, and that missile fragments fell to the south on non-residential areas of the Holosivsky district where a fire broke out. Another 18 houses were also damaged along with critical infrastructure facilities on the outskirts of the city, according to the regional governor, Alexei Kuleva. That's a name we've probably mentioned a couple of times. Though Russia has routinely hit Kyiv with missile strikes since the war broke out nearly 11 months ago, including an intense barrage over the Christmas season, the Saturday strikes were the first Russia had launched at the capital since the new year had kicked off. The reduction in strikes could signal diminishing missile stocks, as Western defense officials repeatedly said that Russia would not be able to maintain the level of attacks it was leveling literally just weeks ago. Ukrainian Air Force spokesman Yuri Inat said that missiles most likely flew on a ballistic trajectory from north of Ukraine, reported from the news outlet Pravda. It is unclear whether exactly the missiles were fired from, as Russian troops have levied missiles from Belarus, as well within its own borders. Inat said officials were still investigating the fragments of the missiles to determine if they were in fact ballistic or S-300 anti-aircraft missiles. The official stressed...
Oh boy.
Yeah, there's been a lot of military hardware repurposing. Both sides have been doing it. I think I might be able to talk about that later, but I can't remember if I wrote it down or not.
Well, we know where Russia's getting most of their armaments.
Well, strangely enough, surface-to-surface missiles have been repurposed for surface-to-air. Naval surface-to-air missiles have been repurposed for surface-to-surface attacks. Like, I've heard a lot of that just in the last week. So it's a very fluid situation where they're having to repurpose hardware that was originally meant for one job to do another job, just because they don't.
Because they're running out of
yes,
the other stuff.
Yeah,
exactly.
But the problem is they're not able to resupply those munitions. So that
they just have to use what they got.
Are eventually going to run out, or they're going to have to buy them from North Korea. Again.
Well, yeah, that's exactly why they're repurposing what they've got. They were like, look, we can't put the Black Sea Fleet out to sea anymore, so why don't we just use those missiles and attack land targets? It's simple programming at that point.
Well, you could do the same with Harpoon.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
which I'm sure, which is what the Ukrainians are doing.
I want to say that I read a story that the Ukrainians found a way to repurpose Neptune missiles for ground strikes. Because, I mean, that's a sea missile.
Yeah, but Harpoons can be launched. I know we gave them Harpoons that can be launched from the coast to the sea.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a surface-to-surface missile.
Change. Yeah, it's probably not hard to repurpose it.
No.
All right, let's see. The officials stress that Ukraine has no way of stopping ballistic missiles, though Ukrainian soldiers have begin training in the U.S. this week, on the Patriot missile system, which is capable of downing ballistic and aircraft-launched missiles, which there's more of that coming. Enot also reported that Russian Tu-95 strategic bombers were airborne and being monitored, though he said it was unclear if they intended to launch their own strikes. At least 2 S-300 missiles were also levied at energy and industrial objects in the Kharkiv region. Saturday, reported that its regional governor, that was reported Saturday by its regional governor Ole, oh boy, that's a good name, Sinyehubov. That was, yeah. Emergency power cuts were immediately made, but no casualties were reported. So that was on Saturday. An update to that story came the following day, Sunday. That's after all the smoke cleared there in that picture. So now we're at day 326. Rescue workers in the southern Ukrainian city of Dnipro confirmed the deaths of now 30 people on Sunday from the Russian missile strike on the apartment building. Russia launched a barrage of 33 cruise missiles on Dnipro, Kharkiv, the capital city of Kyiv, and other cities Saturday following a 2-week hiatus in the strikes. About 1,700 people lived in that 9-story building at Dnipro, which was struck by a Kh-22 fired by Russia's Kursk region on Saturday, according to the Ukrainian Air Force. If you want to know what a Kh-22 looks like, look no further. It was the splash screen. That's what one looks like right there. Anyway, where am I at? Hundreds of Dnipro residents joined the National Guard, emergency medical personnel, and police in rescuing residents from the building. Dozens of people were rescued from the rubble, including 6 children, and this says Ukrainian President Zelensky on his address on Sunday. And there's going to be some overlap here. We're fighting for every person. The rescue operation will last as long as there is even the slightest chance to save lives. He just worded it different. Russia's defense ministry claims responsibility Saturday for the missile strikes on, quote, the military command and control system of Ukraine and related energy facilities, but made no mention of Dnipro. All designated targets have been hit. The goal of the attack has been achieved, the Russian Defense Ministry said on Telegram. I just want to make a sidebar here. Every time I read these stories to you week after week, I notice that a lot of times the officials of Russia and Ukraine use Telegram. This is the same social media platform that every YouTube scammer is using. Just an observation. Like, oh, you've won my prize. PM me on Telegram. It's like, you don't even spell that channel's name correctly. No. Anyway. Ukraine does not currently have the capability to shoot down the Kh-22 missiles, according to the Ukrainian Air Force. This missile has a 950-kilogram warhead, which is also known as an aircraft carrier killer, and it is designed to destroy aircraft carrier groups at sea. Once again, they have repurposed a weapon. This came from Yuri Inat, a spokesperson for Ukraine's Air Force. So yeah, Russians have repurposed aircraft carrier killer missiles, basically air to surface missiles, and now they're using them on buildings. Essentially, it's still a surface target technically. Anyway, moving on to the next day. Now we're at Monday, 327, day 327. Bearded guy was asking, aren't they using vacuum bombs? They only had so many of them. I don't think they have any more. Otherwise, they would have been using them. The thermobaric bombs, you don't hear about them using those anymore. And I think the reason is because those are launched from aircraft, if I'm not mistaken.
No,
No?
those are from those.
Groms or whatever?
No, they're from like the Russian version of like MLRS.
The Grom launcher trucks or whatever.
Yes.
Okay. I think you're right. So yeah, I wonder why they aren't. They must not be using them because they just don't have them?
Or they've got so little left that they're holding them in reserve.
Yeah, maybe they just can't get them into position to fire them. That makes sense. That and the aircraft can do it from the safety of being in the airspace behind their borders because these things have really long range. So they're just playing it safe or careful, I guess. Attack from a distance type thing. Especially since the Russian or the Ukrainian Air Force is getting good, and the surface-to-air missile program that they have is getting quite good. So
no, it's because the Ukrainian Air Force still exists.
Yeah. Yeah, the Ghost of Kyiv might not be a real person, but I'll tell you what, every pilot is as good as that myth now, because they've just got endless experience.
How many pilots do they have left?
Ukraine?
Yeah.
You don't really hear about them losing any.
No,
They
you
have-
have to figure they are losing people.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are losing a lot, but I'm just wondering like how many pilots they
How
have
many
left.
in the Air Force? Yeah. Well,
Because
okay.
the MiGs were decommissioned because they just don't have parts for them anymore because they've been destroyed.
The 29s?
Big 29s.
Huh.
Because a lot of them were destroyed, like, and the parts are pretty much
Exhausted.
they're obsolete and able to find.
I would imagine that Poland is very slowly trickling MiG-29 parts into Ukraine.
No, I have Poland, but I mean, I'm just saying, like,
I think they're triggering entire MiG-29s into Ukraine.
Yeah, I think that stands to reason. But you're right. We hear a lot about a lot of ground troop deaths, but you don't hear a lot about Air Force deaths. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Russian Air Force isn't sortying into Ukrainian airspace like they used to. They're firing from Belarusian airspace or from their side of the border of Russia, launching their missiles into Ukraine and then turning around and heading back. So they're not being engaged. Because their air-to-air missiles are far superior to the ones that the Ukrainians have. So, like, the Russians could fly in, target the Ukrainian Air Force, fire their missiles, turn around and be heading back before the Ukrainians could even pick up a Russian plane on radar. So their missiles are superior. But I think our ground-based radar that they have is good enough to detect them over their airspace, so then they can fire ground to air missiles, which is keeping the Russian Air Force on their side of the border. Because
Fire
you don't
Aussie
hear about
missiles.
them really flying. Yeah, exactly. Like you don't hear about them flying over doing sorties anymore. They're always launching them on their side now, or over Belarusian
Yeah,
airspace.
because the Ukrainians have shot down a shitload of
They're
Russian
getting
planes.
good at it. Exactly. They're getting very good at it.
They're good enough that they're hitting fucking incoming missiles with stingers.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
pretty. I didn't think that would be possible, but apparently it is.
Look, the only reason I know that that's possible is because I saw the Grim Reapers do it.
Well, I've seen actual video of the Ukrainians doing it.
Well, yeah. See, I think GR did it because they saw the videos and they heard stories, so then they
Hmm.
wanted to test the feasibility, and the results were, yeah, you
Yeah.
can totally do it. I was like, holy shit, that's cool. It's kind of neat that we've got a group of YouTube simulator pilots where half of them are actual retired or active combat pilots, so they can actually do these things. And credit where it's due. I mean, DCS World has been out for what, almost 10 years now, and
And then there's SOC.
these guys have been they've been modding this game to keep it as modern and realistic as possible. So it's like, okay,
Yes.
props to those guys, you know.
There's former pilots and veterans in that group,
And then
and
there's
then there's SOC.
There's Suck. He's special.
He's really special.
All right, so we're on to Monday. Now this is a picture from Sunday night, I think. So like they're still working the area, right? First responders increased the death toll of Russia's missile strike on the Ukrainian apartment building to 40 on Monday, because they're still digging out people and bodies. The 9-story apartment building in Dnipro suffered a direct hit from a Russian ballistic missile Saturday evening. First responders have cleared out debris in search of survivors for days since the attack, and the death toll has risen from 23 to 40 as of Monday. Rescue efforts have also saved 39 people trapped in the debris. The Dnipro attack was part of a wave of missile strikes Russia launched into Ukraine this past weekend. In all, Russia fired 30 missiles targeting Dnipro and other major cities, but Ukrainian forces shot down more than 20 of them mid-flight. Boom! And that's it. We saw that we were alive, and that's all, said Alexander Aniskevich, a resident of the building, in an interview with the AP. Russian President Vladimir Putin praised the, quote, positive dynamic of his ongoing invasion of Ukraine on Sunday, just hours after the missile strike. There is a positive dynamic. Everything is developing according to plan, Putin told reporters. I hope that our fighters will please us more than once again. The missile strike in Dnipro coincided with another attack on the capital of Kyiv. There, Ukrainian officials reported damage to infrastructure but no civilian casualties. Ukrainian President Zelensky condemned the attacks on Twitter, saying, "Eternal memory to all whose lives were taken by Russian terror." It was possible to save dozens of people, wounded, traumatized, Zelensky says. Among them are children. The youngest girl was 3 years old. The world must stop evil, he continues, as search and rescue teams sifted through debris. All services are working. We're fighting for every person and every life, and we will find all those involved. Ukrainian Air Force spokesman Yuri Inat told the Ukrainian media that the missiles most likely flew on a ballistic trajectory from north of Ukraine. He said that Ukrainian forces currently have no method of shooting down these missiles, at least not until operators have been trained in the use of the Patriot system, which Joe Biden's administration is poised to deliver next week, which is, 48 hours from now. At the time this was written, so they're talking about this coming Monday. I left a side note on this one because I've been reading these stories for weeks and it's starting to sort of irritate me. Someone should inform the Ukrainians and those reporting in Ukraine that NATO doesn't give a shit about the mention of children casualties. Because you notice they've been talking about that. Missiles hit a maternity ward. The building was struck and a 3-year-old child was killed. Things like that, right? somebody should inform them that NATO doesn't care. Because
No, but the news services do.
well, the thing is if anybody actually cared that children were dying, this war would have been over well over 300 days ago, right? Like, oh my God, won't somebody think of the children? Nobody is saying that in Ukraine. Or nobody is saying that for Ukraine, I should say. They're not saying it. NATO doesn't give a shit. Otherwise, they would have done something already. After the first child was killed in Ukraine, NATO should have been like, this is ridiculous. No fly zone. Immediately. But they didn't, did they? They just don't care. They don't care. Moving on. Whew, you're going to hate this picture. Here you go.
I'm not
I
even
did-
watching.
I did leave I left a caption on it. Russia's state-owned news agency TASS is putting out word that the discovery of classified documents in President Biden's home and former office spaces means a weaker Biden presidency, one that may have trouble securing more money to arm Ukraine in its war with Russia.
They're not wrong.
They're not wrong, but you
They,
can't
they actually hit this one on the head.
you can't weaken a presidency as pathetic as this one. It can't get any weaker.
No, not especially when he goes live on air and says shit like this.
Anyway.
Let's go, Brandon. I agree.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
Yeah. When he says like stuff like that, and stuff like this.
The AFT.
The AFT.
It's like he can't get any weaker.
No, we can't. One policy expert interviewed by TASS said that Biden's standing in the eyes of the U.S. public would likely slip even as major U.S. media outlets desperately try to defend him. If there are any consequences for the president, they will be not so much legal as they are political. In other words, his reputation will suffer, said Andrei Kortunov, General Director of the Russian International Affairs Council. However, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and CNN tend to support Biden. Most likely, they will throw their weight behind the Democratic Party in its attempts to play down the scandal. But Kortunov predicted Republicans would use the scandal to tip the political scales in their favor against Democrats, while other analysts seem to welcome the idea of the GOP using the scandal as a basis to stop sending military aid to Ukraine altogether. Documents discovered in Biden's former office and current home reportedly deal with intelligence matters related to Ukraine, Iran, and the United Kingdom. Dmitry Suslov, deputy head of the Center for Comprehensive European and International Studies and the National Research University Higher School of Economics, God, that's a lot of word salad, seemed hopeful that the GOP would use that fact against Biden the next time he seeks billions in new aid to Ukraine.
Not happening.
It was none other than Biden who oversaw the Ukrainian track in the Obama administration, Suslov says. The way I see it, the Republicans will not miss this chance to capitalize on this factor to the maximum extent to complicate the process of allocating more money for Ukraine. House Republicans have opposed the broad funding proposals put forward by the Biden administration and congressional Democrats. However, many have said that they would continue to support Ukraine funding, although that funding might be in smaller chunks that are focused only on Ukraine's military needs, meaning they're going to cut all the fat out, which is good. Another Russian expert, Andrei Koshkin, head of the political science department at the G.V. Plekhanov Russian University of Economics, said that the scandal would likely weigh heavily on a president who is not very popular among his fellow Americans.
He's not.
He isn't. Society is very unhappy with such a president, Koshkin says. The loss of economic, social, and domestic well-being is another factor on the debit side of his balance sheet. I'd say he nailed that one.
Yeah.
Rebecca Koffler, president of Doctrine and Strategy Consulting and former DIA intelligence officer and the author of Putin's Playbook, said that the point of the TASS story is likely to dishearten Ukraine and create new worries that the U.S. will be less enthusiastic, or a less enthusiastic contributor to its defense effort. That's the primary target, but not the only target, she says. The second target is the U.S. audience, to influence our opinion. The Russians have very nuanced understanding of our politics. They want to weaken President Biden and undermine American support for his policies, especially on Ukraine. Koffler says that about 47% of Americans are wary of continued high levels of spending for Ukraine, and she said that Russia's trying to take advantage of that split, but running the English-only news story. They're trying to sow more division and discourage the U.S. from providing more help, she says. Koffler said a third target is the international audience, which she said is part of a broader effect to show how divisive democracies can be. Well, yes, but that's how propaganda works. Divide and conquer.
Indeed.
Bearded guy says, only fat that's getting cut out is the fat that goes to us. We don't get any fat. All we get is bullshit.
Crumbs.
And the bill. We get the bill and we get bullshit. By the way, I forgot to mention earlier, I don't know if you have it in South Carolina yet, but we just got a Fat Boy's Pizza in my area. That's what I had for dinner.
Yeah, we don't have it in South Carolina.
Oh, it's so good. I'm so glad. I had to wait a year for them to open the place, but it was worth it. Because I saw him write fat, and I was just like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell him what pizza I got. Anyway, moving on. Because I got to get that guy's face off my screen. Okay, so let's talk about Germany. Let's talk about the Germans.
The Germans, yeah.
The Germans, and you may not recognize that face, but German Defense Minister Christine Lambrecht announced her resignation Monday after a series
Oh mein Gott.
Ach mein Gott, yeah, exactly. After a series of public blunders, writing in a letter to Chancellor Olaf Scholz that months of media focus on my person have prevented her from effectively leading the military. I don't think so. I think being a complete fucking retard is why you lost your job. Because when the world was sending funds and missiles and tanks and planes and everything, you sent 5,000 helmets. People will not forget that ever. Lambrecht, who's 57, had been defense minister since December of 2021 when Scholz became chancellor. She previously served as the Minister of Justice and Minister for Families and Women. The valuable work of the soldiers and many people in my department must stand in the foreground, she wrote in her resignation letter to Scholz, which he accepted. Her resignation comes as Germany faces mounting pressure from allies to step up its military support for Ukraine, with Poland's prime minister calling on the German government to provide Leopard 2 battle tanks as they have, along with other arms to Kyiv on Monday. That's pretty insulting when Poland tells Germany, hey, step it up. Send them the same tanks that we gave them because we got them from you too. That's pretty shitty. That's not a good look. Germany has provided howitzers, Gepard self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, and other military support to Ukraine over the past 11 months. Most recently announcing that it will send another 40 Marder armor personnel carriers and Patriot air defense missile batteries. That's cool. The resignation also comes ahead of a Ukraine Defense Contract Group meeting later this week at Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany, where U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is set to host a meeting of allies. Lambrecht's replacement has not yet been announced. Scholz promised to have gender parity in his cabinet, meaning that he will likely appoint a woman to fulfill Lambrecht's role. Might I suggest the granddaughter of Eva Braun? Sorry.
No.
Scholz, meanwhile, has defended his government's calm and well-considered and careful decision-making when it comes to military support for Ukraine. It always remains the case that we act in close consultation and weigh every step carefully, Scholz said on Friday. I don't know if I agree with him. I mean, they're 3 generations out of their Polish holiday of 1939 and their French holiday of 1940. It's like, you guys know war. You guys know what war requires and what you need to help win one. So why are you just eyedroppering the shit in? It's because they don't want They don't want to show the world that they still have all the tools necessary to do exactly what they did before again if you piss them off. I guess. I don't know.
No, it's because the Germans remember what they did last time, and they don't want to make.
They don't
that
want to
same
show
mistake.
off how much military hardware they have right now again. They'll be like, whoa, 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 whoa. You sent all this stuff to Ukraine. Man, what
You've
if
been holding out on us.
you've been holding out on the. What if you did. Didn't we have like a convention where you couldn't have all this stuff? What the hell, Germany?
It's like
And they'll just
we
be
had a
like,
convention. Not only did we have a convention, we had a treaty.
yeah. And
We-
then they're just like, this is exactly why we didn't want to send anything. Scheiße!
It's like, how many of you did we have to hang at Nuremberg for you to get the point?
You were not supposed to know about these panzers. Anyway,
Or what is under the floorboards.
we have just been banned in Germany, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Moving on to Tuesday.
Well, we didn't mention we didn't show the swastika. I think we're fine.
Yes. But okay, I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to get banned in Germany. I don't have
We're
a
not
pro-
gonna
I
get
don't
banned in
have a
Germany.
problem with Germans. Anyway, moving on.
I have a problem with the German royal family, but that's different.
That's a really cool picture I put up there, by the way. Tuesday, January 17th, day 328. Afternoon, actually.
And yes, they're still around. They just aren't in Germany anymore.
So very quiet. Russia detailed plans Tuesday to expand its military to 1.5 million personnel over the next few years, a move that comes as Ukraine warns that Moscow may be planning an offensive and increased tensions between Moscow and the United States and its allies. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu announced the troop increase, which is expected to be complete by 2026, according to Russian news agency TASS. Let me just remind you that I have updated the casualty reports in Ukraine, and the number 119,000 just scrolled by your screen. It's going to take them a lot longer than 2026 to raise this army at the rate that they're losing them in Ukraine right now. If those numbers are to be believed, that is. Russia will also create military districts in Moscow and St. Petersburg, and an army corps will be created in the Republic of Karelia along Russia's border with Finland.
Wait. The Republic of Karelia. I thought we were in. Are we in Star Wars?
No. Karelia is a salient between Russia and Finland. A big one. A very big one. As a matter of fact, World of Tanks has that map in the game rotation. It's one of the original maps. It's quite well done, too. Anyway, the more alarming thing is Russia
it's a different
just
spelling.
reminded the world that they didn't forget that Finland joined NATO just now. Now they're moving shit over there. They're like, we remember that. We saw it.
The
didn't
Winter
forget you.
War is going to be much, much different this
Yeah.
time.
But they were like, we didn't forget that you fucked us. That's basically what Russians telling Finland right now. Moscow will set up, quote, self-sufficient units in Russian-held territories in Ukraine, Shoigu said. You're not really holding much right now, but good luck with that. Only by strengthening the key structural components of the armed forces is it possible to guarantee military security of the state and protect new entities and critical facilities of the Russian Federation, Shoigu says. The announcement comes as Moscow faces setbacks on the battlefield in neighboring Ukraine. Since its 2022 invasion, Russia has been bogged down in Ukraine's east despite some territorial gains. Russia's military currently has around 1 million troops. The Kremlin previously considered the size of its armed forces as sufficient, but that changed after hopes for a quick victory over its neighbor were completely shattered by a fierce Ukrainian resistance. So, in short, they want to expand its military to 1.5 million. They currently have 1 million, and they say that it will take them 3 years to come up with only 500,000 more troops in a nation that has hundreds of millions of people.
Well, remember, you have to factor out how many thousands upon hundreds of thousands upon millions will leave the country because they don't want to get drafted.
Possibly, yeah, it's a thing. But, I mean, think about it. Hundreds of millions of people, they need 500,000, they need 500,000. and they think it's going to take them 3 years to do it. That's that's the most telling part of this. Like at the beginning when I read this story before I typed it up and put it in here, I thought, wow, they want to go 1.5 million. That's a lot of people. But then as I got to the bottom and it said, but they already have a million, I'm like, wow, these guys are incompetent fools. They can't even build a military. It takes them 3 years to get 500,000. What the hell? Anyway, I mean, I can't honestly say. How many people did we swell when we implemented the draft in Korea or Vietnam? Like, I don't think it was 500,000. But we weren't looking for 500,000, were we? I don't know. It just seems like in 3 years, with conscription in a nation as big as Russia, you would think that they could build a military of 4 million people or 6 million people very quickly. Like, that's the one thing I used to worry about China. It's like, okay, China has the noisiest navy in the ocean. So being able to track them and follow them and watch them, pretty easy for our navy. Their air force is making YouTube videos, stringing together clips from different times of the day with different aircraft and different pilots and trying to make it seem like that was one fluid combat mission with the cheesiest cock rock 80s music in the background because they're trying to be fake hard. And it's like, so they're not an issue. Not the Air Force, they're more of a joke. But at the end of the day, a nation of almost 2 billion people should be able to conscript an army of 500 million if they wanted to. Because that's the one thing they have an abundance of is bodies. And Russia's like 500,000 in 3 years.
Well, what I'm wondering is why doesn't Poland just retake Kaliningrad if they want it so bad?
You know what I think it is?
They're afraid of Belarus waltzing in with their army?
No. I think what this is diplomacy at work. I really do. I remember, was it 1971 Patton, right? There was a phrase in there. That's what it is to be a good ally. Instead of being a good soldier or a good general. Sometimes you have to do the shitty thing to be a good ally, right? I don't think Poland's doing a shitty thing. I think they're playing it safe because when this ends and we start demanding reparations for this war, like the United States will demand reparations in the form of probably sanctions or, reduced oil export costs, something.
Poland's taking losses. They have taken losses.
Yeah.
Buildings and people.
I think Poland will simply say, look, Kaliningrad is ours. You have 90 days to vacate. This was never yours in the first place. Go away.
Technically, it belonged to Germany before.
Yes, but I think that would be
Russia.
I think that would
Before
be well within
Germany, it belonged to Poland.
I think it would be well within Poland's rights to demand that.
Oh.
Oh, good night, bearded guy. We'll see you later.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what they're doing. They're trying to be as diplomatic statesmen as possible. Like, look, we're going to do our part. We're going to try to help. We're trying to do the refugee thing. We're trying to give you arms and everything like that. And then when this is all over and you ask us, what do we want in return? We're just going to simply say, we want part of our country back. Because they shouldn't have that foothold in our territory. And I think NATO would be like, done. Like, if that's all you're asking for, done. Like that's something that they don't even have to write a check for. I think it's pretty easy. That's pretty obvious to me. Anyway, moving on. Because we're actually moving along pretty good. Wednesday. I think
Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday's not big. I think Thursday was the big news day. So Wednesday, I'll have this for you.
Oh boy.
And I think the only part that you're going to recognize in that is a giant helicopter rotor. Ukrainian President Zelensky is saying Wednesday that the pain is unspeakable after a helicopter crashed just outside of Kyiv, killing the country's interior minister and at least 13 other people. Interior Minister Denis Monastyrsky, who oversaw Ukraine's police and emergency services, is the most senior official to die in Ukraine since Russia invaded nearly 11 months ago. Monastyrsky's deputy Yevin Yenin. Hang on, I gotta sneeze. Give me just a sec. False alarm. Yevin Yenin and State Secretary of the Ministry of Internal Affairs Yuri Lubkovich were also among those killed in the crash in Brovary, according to Ihor Klimenko, the chief of Ukraine's national police. The pain is unspeakable, Zelensky wrote on his Telegram account, describing the disaster as a terrible tragedy on a black morning. Officials said 4 children were among those dead and that 25 people were injured, including at least 11 children. See, they're trying the children thing, but I'm telling you, NATO don't care about children. I've instructed the security services of Ukraine, in cooperation with the National Police of Ukraine and other authorized bodies, to find out all the circumstances of what happened, he says. 9 of those killed were aboard the chopper when it crashed, while the others who died were on the ground. A U.S. official who has worked alongside Monastyrsky for months was quoted as saying on Wednesday that the Interior Minister was considered one of Ukraine's best leaders, and his forces, the National Guard, Border Guard, and State Police, are all heavily involved in combat against the Russians. There is no immediate word on whether the crash, which was near a kindergarten, was an accident or related to the war. No fighting has been reported recently in the Kyiv area. At the scene of the crash, at least 4 bodies in the ground were covered by reflective sheets as officials cleared helicopter debris from a kindergarten playground, according to the AP. Wreckage also sat on top of a charred vehicle and building. It is too early to talk about the reasons for the crash, the spokesman for Ukraine's Air Forces, Yuri Inat, told a television channel. He said an investigation could take some time. The crash happened days after a Russian strike on the apartment building in the southeastern Ukraine killed 45 people. So that Dnipro attack, the death toll keeps rising because they keep finding the bodies. So now it's up to 45 people, including 6 children. Another very sad day. New losses, said Ukraine's First Lady, Olena Zelenska, dabbing teary eyes and pinching her nose as she responded to the news at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. The forum held 15 seconds of silence after opening the session to honor the Ukrainian officials killed. Haven't had time to recover from one tragedy, and there's already another one, said the deputy head of the Ukrainian presidential office, Kirilenko Tomoshenko. So those are my chopper crashes and Dnipro stories. Moving on. The U.S. has transferred thousands of artillery shells from a weapons stockpile in Israel to Ukraine for weapons aid. Remember the shell game thing I was talking about in the intro?
Mm-hmm.
The Israeli stockpile has traditionally been used to arm U.S. forces operating in the Middle East. The U.S. has begun relying on it to arm Ukrainians, however, as U.S. aid to the country cuts deeper and deeper into stocks. The stockpile in Israel is the second major store of weapons the U.S. has begun to drain, as it also turned to stores in South Korea in recent months. Number 2 shell in the shell game. The location of stores is politically sensitive, however, as both Israel and South Korea have vowed not to provide lethal aid to Ukraine. Neither of the countries has officially broken that promise, but some fear that Russia could argue that allowing the U.S. to siphon arms from their stockpiles constitutes such aid, according to the Times. If it's part of, embassy territory rules, then no, they're not. It's like, nope, that's U.S. soil. It's just on foreign soil, whatever. Those stores are U.S. stores, not Israel's, or whatever. Stuff like that. The new rush of artillery ammunition comes as Russia's invasion of Ukraine nears the 1-year mark. Russia plans to expand the size of its military to 1.5 million troops in the coming years with a series of conscriptions. So you were right. We're talking about drafts. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu announced the troop increase on Tuesday, which is expected to be complete by 2026, according to Russian news agency TASS. Only by strengthening the key structural components of the armed forces is it possible to guarantee the military security of the state and protect new entities and critical facilities of the Russian Federation. That's a lot of word salad coming from Sergei Shoigu. Russia's military has around 1 million troops currently, and it is difficult to estimate how many have been killed in the fighting just in Ukraine. Wait, they're dying somewhere else?
Ah,
Huh. Maybe they're just suicidal? I don't know. The Kremlin previously considered the size of its armed forces as sufficient, but that changed after hopes of its quick victory over its neighbor were completely shattered by Russian or Ukrainian resistance. So that was overlap. Moving on, we're up to Thursday. See, we're getting there. Like
Yep.
day 330. So this is the part where I asked you, is Israel about to send a shitload of Merkava tanks to Ukraine?
possibly.
Well, there's a reason I asked that question, but let me read you the story first, and then you'll understand why. Russia is likely to deploy its T-14 Armata main battle tanks in Ukraine. This came from the Yeah, finally, right?
All 15 of them.
This came from the UK.
Damn.
It's about time, right?
Right.
This came from the UK Defense Ministry on a Thursday morning intelligence update, but said that its decision was associated with problems for the Kremlin. In late December 2022, imagery showed T-14s on a training area in southern Russia. This is a site that has been associated with pre-deployment activity for the Ukraine operation. Since December, pro-Russian bloggers and outlets have asserted that the tank, which has some described as a super tank, would soon be used in Russia's ongoing invasion in Ukraine. The UK said that it was unclear if the tank type has yet been mobilized. However, according to a UK assessment, the tank has had less than stellar production and testing history. Any T-14 development is likely to be a high-risk decision for Russia. 11 years in development, the program has been dogged with delays, reduction in plant fleet size, and reports of multiple manufacturing issues. According to Russian state media outlet TASS, the tank has had issues with its engines and thermal imagers, which producers claim have been fixed since 2020. According to the AP, in one instance of the tanks broke down during a 2015 Victory Day parade. However, according to Russian media, the tank has been tested in Syria, where the Kremlin has had a heavy presence since the Syrian civil war. The T-14, according to TASS, features fully digital systems, an unmanned turret, and the crew protected in an isolated armored capsule. It is equipped with a 125mm cannon and anti-tank missiles, as well as modular and active protective systems to, well, protect it. This came from Popular Mechanics. The military potential of the T-14 has also been questioned, given the role that modern anti-tank weapons, such as American-made TOW missiles, that's not modern, anyway, have been played. National interest has argued that missiles can make the tank obsolete. I would say that the Javelin would be the more, quote, modern anti-tank missile. Anyway. Production is the only way in the production is probably only in the low teens, while commanders are unlikely to trust the vehicle in combat, says the ministry. All of the armored vehicle systems come at a steep cost. Bloomberg reported in 2018 that the T-14 comes with an expensive price tag, limiting the proliferation of the platform throughout the entire military. Besides the initial purchase, there's also the strain of maintaining those platforms in the battlefield. An additional challenge for Russia is adjusting its logistics chain to handle the T-14 because it is larger and heavier than all other Russian tanks. The Russian military has suffered from poor logistics and frayed supply lines since the beginning of the war. Reports have surfaced. Where'd it go? I scrolled and I screwed up. Reports have surfaced of underserviced equipment, old rations, and new recruits being forced to supply their own essentials, such as bandages. The Pentagon has repeatedly related over recent months that Russia has been unable to fill these gaps. The UK Defense Ministry concluded that the tank would likely only be fielded for propaganda purposes rather than any substantial military advantage. The Kremlin would be taking this risk as the war approaches the one-year mark, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, and has lost over 3,100 other tanks. The Ukraine report also comes as Ukraine is making its own push for new tanks. The UK has promised its Challenger 2s to Kyiv. France is considering its own Leclerc tank. In Germany, it's Leopard 2 tanks. I mean, uh-oh. We have Chad Napper. Chad Napper.
Yeah.
Crunch.
He's not there to say no, I'm not. Anyway, I think it's funny that all the 120 millimeter smoothbore Krupp cannon NATO tanks are all being named. I love it.
Well, you know, they're also showcasing the latest version of the Abram X.
Yes, but we're not giving them those. The
No, we're keeping
deliberations
those
to
to
send
ourselves.
war machines hinges on U.S.'s own willingness to send its own M1 Abrams tanks. Hang on, let me deal with this. Let me deal with this. I'm gonna put him over here. I'll put him in timeout until he wakes up. It happens. He gets up way earlier than I do.
And
Anyway. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba and Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov continued to appeal for tanks in a joint statement on Thursday, specifically asking for Leopards and any other countries that possess them, such as Canada and Denmark. The improvement of the provision of the armed forces of Ukraine with modern armored vehicles and increasing their fire and maneuverability capabilities with the help of Western tanks is one of the most pressing and urgent needs, the Ukrainian ministers have said. None of the T-14s that I recall that are being field tested are complete. Like, each one had a specific thing done to it so they can do all the different tests on all the different chassis. And then once they had all the kinks worked out, they would stick all the improvements on the one new tank. So it's like, one of them has an upgraded cooling system. The other one has an upgraded electronics package. The other one has an upgraded targeting system. Stuff like that. So it's like,
well, when you've exhausted your supply
Yeah.
of Soviet era tanks,
Yeah.
what else do you have to send to the battlefield?
all the craptacular Cold War ones in the Kubinka Tank Museum. And I know what you're going to say. You mean they're going to throw a Russian engine in the mouse? No.
No, they don't need to throw a Russian engine. They just have to throw a throw a generator in it. It runs off of electric engines.
Yeah, but the thing is it needs a gigantic 2,600 horsepower Maybach diesel engine to turn the generator.
I think a modern diesel engine from like probably.
I think they could just use a locomotive engine.
One of their modern engines over there, either as you said, either a locomotive or one of their giant, one of the engines out of those Scud missile trucks might do it.
Nah, it's not enough horsepower. I think a small locomotive engine can do it though.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, maybe even the one in the T-14. Who knows? That's if
But
they can get the thing to stop
They
catching
won't.
fire.
They won't field that because that's last ditch.
No, they're moving T-14s in. There's a staging field. That's where they were seen.
I'm talking about the mouse.
Oh, that's never moving. No way. There's only one left. There's like,
well, they got the other half.
Well, yeah, but it's only one. Like, No, because we have 3 Seawolves. See, like, I can't even give you an example of, well, we only got one. No, it's fine.
We got more than 3.
We have 3. Seawolf, Connecticut, and I forgot the other one. Wisconsin? Something like that? I don't remember. Anyway, one of them's got a smashed-in nose because they hit a seamount. Connecticut. They did. Moving on. And I will show you this, actually. President Biden's administration is poised to announce yet another massive military aid package for Ukraine on Friday, but it reportedly will not include M1 Abrams tanks.
Obviously. Keep those for ourselves.
Artillery and ammunition is expected to comprise of the bulk of Friday's announcement, although thought is that the U.S. is also expected to deliver some armor support in the form of Stryker combat vehicles. Yes, with a Y.
With a Y.
With a Y. Politico reported this on Thursday.
They spelled it properly this time.
Yes.
It's nice strike mobile.
It is. It's a striker.
If I could own one, I would.
You could. As soon as I get my fucking MRAP from Afghanistan.
All right, as soon as you win,
That's gonna be a backlog like the Russian tanks.
Scott, I put you
Ooh.
up there because you fell asleep and you were snoring.
Yeah, we
And
were heard
you-
some. We were
And
hearing
if
some.
you
serious
weren't
snoring.
asleep, you would have instantly said, I wasn't snoring. But now that you're awake, I'll pull you back in.
We heard some serious C's, man.
There you go. Anyway, you were sawing logs. Anyway, where did I leave off?
I muted myself, so how could I be sawing logs?
You were
We
sawing
heard it.
logs before I stuck you in there. Ask people in the
I was
chat.
muted.
No, you weren't.
No, you weren't. We got audio.
They heard you. Anyway, it's no big deal. You're awake now. The lack of M1 Abrams battle tanks comes as Ukrainian Western allies point fingers over which country should provide tanks. The U.S. and other allies have pushed Germany to provide vehicles such as Leopard 2 tanks and are considered to be best suited for Ukrainians' conflict. Well, yeah, we're going to be like, Germany, why don't you send yours? You're the most suited for this. Why? Because we're closer? Yes. Exactly. Germany has already sold large numbers of Leopard tanks to other European countries that are in close proximity to Ukraine, such as Poland. That proximity makes the tanks ideal from an aid standpoint as it allows delivery to be cheaper and faster. See, I was right. It's because yours are closer.
Just drop them off right at the border and just wait for
just
some
drive 'em on
Ukrainian to
over.
come by and pick it up.
Western military leaders will meet in Germany on Friday, where multiple nations are expected to announce new aid initiatives. The new rush of aid comes as Russia's invasion of Ukraine nears the 1-year mark. Russia has also announced to expand the size of its military to 1.5 million troops in the coming years with a series of conscriptions. Defense Minister Shoigu announced a troop increase on Tuesday, which is expected to be complete by 2026. This is a lot of rehash. Actually, a lot of it's rehash. The Kremlin previously considered the size of its armed forces as sufficient, but that changed after. Yeah, that's
Eh,
all.
just
That's all
skip
the thing.
Skip it.
Because you lost like 150,000 troops.
So now they got to add 500,000 more.
Mhm.
It's okay. Moving on. More shell game. There it is. The Pentagon has asked its forces stationed in South Korea to send equipment to Ukraine to aid it in the war against Russia. Two defense officials said that the Pentagon has requested U.S. forces, Korea, USFK, to send 155mm howitzer artillery ammunition rounds that would likely be sent to Ukraine after first transferring through Germany. The U.S. is looking under every rock for munitions, quotes one official. DoD spokesman, Lieutenant Colonel Marty Miners, Marty Miners, okay, did not confirm details on the transfer of equipment, but said that the move would not detract from the U.S.'s regional readiness in and around South Korea. Any potential sale or transfer of equipment will be closely evaluated against current and future U.S. and Republic of Korea military readiness requirements on the peninsula, and will not detract from our defensive posture or response capability against regional threats. USFK spokesman Colonel Isaac Taylor echoed this and said providing Kyiv with arms from the U.S. Forces Korea would have zero impact on U.S. operations and its ability to execute its ironclad commitment to the defense of South Korea.
Really?
Really? It's like, no, we don't need the bullets to stop the North Koreans. They're starving to death. We could just feed them to death. Anyway.
That is actually a thing.
That is a thing. We even saw that at the end of Band of Brothers, actually. You gotta stop feeding these people. You're literally feeding them to death, which is just weird. There should be no doubt that we remain ready to fight tonight, he added. The announcement comes days after reports surfaced showing that the U.S. had also transferred thousands of artillery shells and weapon stockpiles in Israel to Ukraine. Neither Israel nor South Korea have provided defensive aid to Ukraine since the war began, though concerns have mounted that Russia may argue that Seoul and Jerusalem have broken their pledge in allowing U.S. forces to siphon arms from their stockpiles, first reported in the New York Times earlier this week. The request from the USFK is in addition to a separate sale of 100,000 155 military shells from South Korea to the U.S., which the U.S. will then send to Ukraine, a deal that has been in the works for nearly a year, defense officials confirmed Thursday. The push to get more arms to Ukraine comes as Russia has allegedly looked into expanding its military to 1.5 million soldiers. Ukraine Defense Ministry said on Thursday, Ukraine Defense Ministry on Thursday assessed that Russia may also be looking to transport its T-14 tanks into Ukraine after the Russian media in late December reported that Moscow was holding drills with those tanks in southern Russia, a staging area before entering Ukraine. Though the ministry also noted that the tanks' unreliability and said that the move to send these vehicles into Ukraine would likely primarily be for propaganda purposes at best. The ministry said that the production is probably in the low teens and noted that Russian commanders don't trust the vehicle in combat. Ukraine has repeatedly requested tanks from all other Western allies.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Which anti-tank missiles did we give them?
Javelins.
Pretty sure the javelins
It would just smash
would
those
do
things.
pretty well against those.
Yeah. Like, okay, before next episode, I'm going to look into what each T-14 chassis has on it, because I happen to know, I'm not going to say for a fact, but I happen to know that the vast majority of the small fleet of T-14s, no two are alike. Like,
Yeah.
they were testing every different system in every different chassis so they can do it quickly. You know, it's like you don't take one tank, put everything on it, and then watch each system fail and have to do them one at a time. You put one system in each chassis, run them all simultaneously, and go, this is good, this is good, this is good. Okay, we're going to take these bits and put them on this production tank. It makes it
And then you
faster.
spend the next year trying to integrate all that shit and make it actually work together.
Yes. But I mean, I was thinking, like one of them has an upgraded cooling system, one has a better turbo supercharger, one has a better targeting system, one has a better radio, things like that. You know, like they might not all mesh together. Like the radio has nothing to do with the cooling system. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. But yeah, things that are integrated systems, you're right. They would have to like, okay, this is good for this system, this is good for this targeting system, and this is good for this gun. Now, how do we make them all talk together? Because 3 different manufacturers came up with these ideas. We want this, this, and this. Like they're a la carting it. I completely agree with you there. Moving on, because we're going to go with a Y. Bing! I actually have a picture of a striker.
Oh, yay.
The Pentagon announced Thursday that it is sending an additional $2.5 billion, with a B, in military aid to Ukraine, including 90 Stryker combat vehicles for the first time and another 59 Bradleys. The latest package will also replenish the U.S. supplied HIMARS systems, the National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missile Systems, the Avenger Air Defense Systems, which the Pentagon says will counter a range of short and medium-range threats and bolster Ukraine's layered air defense. Missing from the latest package are M1 Abrams tanks, which Kyiv has been asking for in recent months. Ukrainian President Zelensky appeared frustrated over a lack of specific weaponry at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Switzerland on Wednesday. You know, Davos, where all the people get together on their private jets and then sit there and browbeat the world about climate change.
It's Jens Stoltenberg's fault.
The Swedish underwear model?
Mm-hmm.
How so?
Because I said so.
SAYD?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just had to be sure.
Mm-hmm.
There are times where we wouldn't and shouldn't hesitate, or we shouldn't compare when someone says, I will give tanks if someone else will also share his tanks, said Zelensky through a translator. You gotta admit he's right. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said last week that the British will send Challenger 2 tanks to Ukraine, upping the pressure on the US to send Abrams tanks and Germany to send Leopard 2s. Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas said other lawmakers across the political spectrum have voiced support for sending U.S. tanks to Ukraine. Now, it is the case that Germany's tanks are a little bit better suited for Ukraine's army and their supply and logistics systems, Cotton told Dina Perino, actually, from America's Newsroom on Thursday. But I'm confident, given the weapon systems we've already provided Ukraine, that we could also support U.S. Abrams-made tanks going into Ukraine as well. The latest package of aid to Ukraine comes the day before Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is set to meet Germany with defense ministers from allied nations. The U.S. has sent more than $26.7 billion in military aid since Russia invaded in February 22. Thursday's package also includes 350 Humvees, 53 mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles, 3 million rounds of small arms ammunition, and 2,000 anti-armor rockets. 3 million rounds of ammo. Now you know where your primers are going.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of annoying. We'll get to that in a bit, though. All right, moving on. We have reached Friday. Today, day 331. We made it, gentlemen. We're there.
No way.
Yeah, we're there. And funny enough, I have 4 stories left. Let's start with this one.
Ugh, 4.
Well, 2 of them are stuff we talked about earlier, like the ATF thing and all that. Russia's nuclear energy agency, Rosatom, has been working to supply Russia's military with raw materials for missile fuel, components, and technology in a move to help it circumvent sanctions and continue the war in Ukraine. This came from a report by the Washington Post that was found on Friday. According to a letter obtained by the Ukrainian intelligence from a Rosatom chief in October 22, the agency referred to a meeting with the defense ministry and offered to supply aid to the Russian military and to weapons manufacturers that are under international sanctions. The Russian weapons manufacturers reportedly included missile systems producer Almaz Anti, a maker of missile launch systems and unguided bombs, NPK Techmash, producer of the infamous ballistic Iskander missiles. Oh boy, I should have read this one ahead of time. It's a really weird Cyrillic. Vysokotochichnie Komplesky. That is not an easy one. Along with several other manufacturers that develop rocket launchers, cluster munitions, aircraft, armored vehicles, and tanks. It is unclear when Ukrainian intelligence got a hold of the letter, though reports surfaced earlier this month indicating that Kyiv was pushing the European Union to target the Russian energy company in its latest round of sanctions. Despite Rosatom's involvement in illegally occupying Ukraine's Zaporizhia's nuclear power plant since March of 22 and appeals made by Kyiv and NGOs, it has evaded Western sanctions. The U.S. and the EU blackballed Russian oil, natural gas, and coal in a move to hinder Russian President Putin's war efforts, but Rosatom has remained out of the sanctions crosshairs. The Biden administration reportedly considered sanctioning the Russian nuclear energy giant at the onslaught of the invasion, but ultimately decided against it as the White House looked to find cleaner energy alternatives. Oh, so we weren't sanctioning them because we want them to work for us. Got it. The U.S. has stopped short of banning energy imports from Russia when it comes to mineral fuels, including uranium, which account for roughly half of all uranium needs for the U.S. nuclear power plants. See? In 2019, Russian imports of mineral fuels totaled $13 billion, according to U.S. Trade Commission, though this figure dropped slightly in 2022. U.S. imports on mineral fuels remained Washington's top imported good from Russia during the first 7 months of the war in Ukraine, but fell by 17% from the prior year, according for 43% of total imports compared to 60% in the first 7 months of 2021. This came from a report by the U.S. Trade Representatives in December 22. European nations like Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania have all called for Rosatom to be hit with international sanctions, and it is unclear if agencies' actions to help Russia evade sanctions will prompt the Biden administration to take further action. State Department could not be reached for further comment. Of course they couldn't. They're too busy buying Russian uranium. So, Um, we're kind of that was the last of the basic stories of the week because I had a different question that came up for the theme of the show today. So, the first question I asked was, is Putin dead? And it kind of makes you wonder, why the hell would I ask you that, right? Like, he's been doing all these things. Has he? Have you seen him calling shots and making these announcements? No. It's been everybody but him. That's why the question was asked, is Putin dead? And funny enough, I'm not the one who asked it. President Volodymyr Zelensky actually implied it first. Now, I have a story to help back this.
Are you sure he didn't just say, he's dead? He just doesn't know it yet.
No, and he wasn't wearing black sunglasses, and he didn't say he's not dead, he just went home. No, it's not that. It's not that, I promise. So, why do I believe this question is valid? Let's rewind to yesterday for a minute. Thursday, January 19th. The story broke at 7 a.m. And I'll show you the guy involved. This guy. You may not recognize his face. Not if you haven't been paying to world politics in the last 15 years. I have. I know who that fucker is. Ardent ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin and Deputy Chairman of Russia's Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, on Thursday warned NATO allies that a defeat for Russia in Ukraine could provoke a nuclear war. The loss of a nuclear power in a conventional war can provoke the beginning of a nuclear war, he said in a Telegram post as Western officials convened for another meeting with the Ukraine Defense Contract Group at Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany. Nuclear powers have never lost major conflicts on which their fate depends, the Kremlin official added. Medvedev, who also once served as president of Russia from 2008 to 2012, has repeatedly threatened the use of nuclear weapons. His comments on Russia's theoretical defeat in Ukraine may show that the Kremlin is increasingly worried about its ability to win Putin's war as the Western support for Kyiv continues to roll in. The U.S. is expected to announce another $3 billion in defensive aid on Friday, which we just covered. The announcement, or I already said that, didn't I? Yeah. Let's see. The $3 billion package pledged to send Bradley fighting vehicles and other military vehicles suited for combat like armored personnel carriers, mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles, and high-mobility multi-purpose wheeled vehicles. Ukrainian President Zelensky has repeatedly pleaded with the allied nations to send tanks to assist his troops on the front, particularly in the Donbass, though Abrams M1 tanks are still not expected to be included in the latest package. Stryker armored combat vehicles, artillery, and additional munitions are expected to be among the latest aid Washington will announce Friday. The UK, France, and Poland have pledged to send tanks to Ukraine as the US and Germany face mounting pressure to answer Zelensky's calls for what is needed at the front. Germany this week faced renewed international ire after it suggested that it would only deploy tanks to Ukraine if the US did it too. Hey, we'll do it if they do it. Here are the times where we shouldn't hesitate or shouldn't compare when someone says, I will give tanks if someone else will share theirs. I don't think this is the right strategy to go with, Zelensky said on Thursday in a Davos video conference. He's not wrong. So anyway, my question is, why did Medvedev make this announcement? Why is he becoming more visible in the public sphere?
Probably because Putin's starting to get scared.
Well, people are wondering if he's dead because he hasn't been physically seen for days. Maybe longer. I think days for sure, though. Like ever since
He's been seen.
Huh?
He's been seen the December 25th because
Right.
he had a press council with Belarus.
Yeah, before
So-
New Year's.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying that. I'm just putting the turntable here in terms of time.
Sure.
He's
So
been
I mean,
he's been seen because they were talking about Belarus is not being absorbed by Russia.
yeah, I
and all
remember
that
he
jazz.
actually met with Lukashenko.
Yeah, so he's like, I'm not absorbing them. It's just
No, he's just
Um,
my lapdog.
yeah. Well, he's becoming more of absorbed. Anyways,
Yeah. So
um,
it's like now you've got the former president who was former prime minister, who was playing this musical chairs with Putin for like the last 25 years in terms of who's in charge, but I think he's just a Putin puppet. And he's making this announcement saying, if we lose conventional war, this starts nuclear war. And it's like, so what you're basically admitting is you have been backed into a corner, and now that's the only thing you got left. So now
No,
you're threatening to wave the nuclear saber because your conventional saber has already been blunted.
no, it's more like you're admitting you're a sore loser.
Well, yeah. Thing is if he uses a nuclear weapon, he doesn't lose. The whole world does. That's not really. That's the problem with mutually assured destruction, you see. One side doesn't lose in mutually assured destruction. The whole world loses. Which is why the saber rattling of nuclear threat, or of a threat of nuclear weapons, or usage of nuclear weapons, seems to always work, because it always makes people cush and back down. Where you should be like, let me see you blush.
You know, I don't see what your problem is, Sean. You don't
Uh,
have a lost nuclear weapon 103 miles from your house.
Hey?
Look it up.
Are you 103 miles away from said weapon?
Yes.
We're not talking about the
They found the Savannah bomb.
Oh. Well.
They found the Savannah bomb. I'm talking about the one they dropped on Florence. They couldn't recover because it's so deep in the ground.
That's fine then. I don't know. Just if we don't win conventional war, we start nuclear war.
Yeah, but the Russians have always been known to saber rattle nuclear weapons.
Yeah, I know, but it's so I don't know.
The
North
only
Korea.
time the Russians have ever used nuclear weapons are to snuff out their gas line.
I
their
know,
gas
but
fires.
that doesn't mean that you can't just saber rattle
I mean,
the world, saying I could use it, red button.
well,
I just you know the way I look at it, it's like you're not gonna out North Korea with that. You know, they've already been doing that.
what
Yeah, but
Heidi is
at least they have
saying is
successful launches, not like North Korea.
the Russians have been saber rattling, saying, "We'll use our nukes if we don't win." You know,
Yeah.
like the boy who cried wolf. I mean, you could only say it so many times until the rest of the world says, "Yeah, go ahead, use it. See what happens. You'll destroy the whole fucking world. Good job, dumbass." And they
They'll do it,
literally say
though.
that to Russia.
That's the problem. It's like who gets the last laugh in that situation? They
Nobody
will
does.
still do it. Who wins? The Australians because they're far enough away from it all.
No, the Russian. No, a new
Greenland?
study shows they're still fucked. Honestly,
Antarctica,
no.
the
Honestly,
International Space Station,
if
maybe.
if Russia fires a nuke because they don't win in Ukraine, you have how many nukes do you think will be heading towards Russia right after that?
Not just from us.
And not just from the United States.
Germany
You
would
come out-
fire, Israel would fire, France would fire, England would fire.
You're talking every single nuke that is in Western Europe would fire straight on Moscow.
That's the problem.
No, that is the problem.
That is
That
the
is the
problem.
problem.
Because if one Russian nuclear missile is sent out and it goes off, that's one containable fallout area. But if everyone else fires in response, that is a giant radiation cloud. That's why they're doing it, though. Because
You
he
know
was
what?
like,
All out for, baby.
yeah, but I mean, it's like you can't do that yet. I don't have power armor.
That
Sorry.
sucks. Armor ain't here, but it's gonna happen.
I know, but no. I need my T-51. I needs it.
No, I don't want T-51. I want like Warhammer power armor.
Oh, 40K armor? Okay.
That'll beat the shit out of that.
Yeah, I know, but that's like, do you ever notice Warhammer 40K armor is what you get when Power Armor and the Juggernaut get together and have a dirty love child?
That's a dreadnought.
Yeah.
That dreadnought is like a human encased exoskeleton of a tank
Yes.
on feet.
Yes.
like- That's like the equivalent of like 18 Abrams tanks. I mean, Abrams, yeah.
So it's 18 times less likely to be sent to Ukraine. Got it.
Exactly, bro.
Too much.
Exactly.
All right, moving on. I got another story about is he dead? Here we go. The Kremlin on Thursday confirmed that Russian President Vladimir Putin exists after Ukrainian President Zelensky appeared to question whether he was even still alive when pressed on when peace negotiations might start. This is not a cinema where you're waiting for a film to start, he said Wednesday, according to a live translation of his comments at the Davos World Economic Forum. This is a giant tragedy. Negotiations itself is not about peace automatically, he added. Zelensky not only pointed to previously failed diplomatic talks between Ukraine and Russia, but Moscow's blatant lies to other world leaders in the lead up to the invasion. The Ukrainian president also said that at this point, he's not sure who's making the decisions inside the Kremlin and questioned whether Putin was even still functioning as the president of Russia. I don't understand that he's still alive or that it's him particularly making the decisions, Zelensky added. It's unclear why Zelensky questioned whether Putin was still alive, as he was seen Wednesday at a St. Petersburg World War II memorial. Really? Because did any of you see that? You would think that would have made the news. Zelensky's comments may have been a nod at how Putin has withdrawn from public events in recent weeks, including his annual press conference, which lasts some 4 hours in 2021, but was canceled last month. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov pushed back on any suggestions that Putin was no longer around and said, "It is clear that both Russia and Putin are a big problem for Ukraine and for Zelensky. And it is also clear that purely psychologically speaking, Mr. Zelensky would prefer that neither Russia or Putin exists." I don't think it's just Zelensky who wants that right now.
Pretty sure it's everybody.
Pretty sure it's the entire world right now. But the sooner the Ukrainian regime realizes that Russia and Putin exists and will exist, that sooner or later it will still have to give up everything anti-Russian. The better for a country like Ukraine, he added. What an arrogant prick. It's like, you are the shell of a superpower that you used to be, and the world is still afraid of the boogeyman image. But like heavyweight champion boxer Deontay Wilder, you've been exposed. People know how to beat you now. You're just working off of a reputation of a thing that you aren't anymore. You don't exist like that anymore. Nobody is afraid of you anymore. Because like we were saying earlier, you can threaten nukes, but the second you pop off a bottle rocket, you're gonna have 100 come back in your direction. So it's like, do you really want that smoke? Because I don't think you do. And truth be told, I'm sure most of the people in Russia are lovely people. They just get up and put their boots on like everyone, like we do. They go to work and work their 9 to 5. They like Starbucks and McDonald's and WWE and WrestleMania and maybe even NASCAR. You know, they
NASCAR.
they got a taste of capitalism. They like it. They don't like their
They even
leadership.
like soccer.
They like freedom. They don't like their leadership. And how they haven't risen up against it yet is still a little baffling to me, but then again, they're a disarmed nation of people, so I mean that's the same reason why Canada hasn't thrown Trudeau's ass out, right? Same kind of thing.
Even though he's got several provinces pushing back on their gun ban.
Yeah, good luck with that. What are they gonna do? Show up with pitchforks and no guns? Okay,
Yeah.
So that's the end of the Ukrainian conflict thing. But because we had other major things in the news this week, such as SHOT Show and the ATF ruling and things like that, I thought I would open up the floor for the last couple of minutes so you and I and everyone here could talk about it. Because, you know, a lot of YouTubers out there are already pushing their videos and their opinions, and I really haven't had time to do such a thing, so this is the time we're going to do it. We're going to do it together, all of us.
Well,
So
I want to discuss an article.
Go ahead.
Did you hear that the Chechens and the Wagner group are up in arms over the new rulings in the Russian army?
Such as?
Apparently, the new rulings in the Russian army state that you are no longer allowed to have a beard.
Did they see who is in charge of the Chechen contingent? Rezvan
Yes.
Kadyrov.
Have you seen most of the Chechens? They've got ridiculous beards.
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
basic.
they're called badass
As-
beards.
As
Yes.
does the Wagner group. Hell, even I have a good beard, but you don't see me complaining about it because I'm neither in the Wagner group nor in a Chechen. But
Look,
apparently, the Chechens and the Wagner groups have ridiculous beards.
what is the Chechen equivalent of a Ford F-250 with a Power Stroke turbo diesel and a Salt Life sticker on the back window? Because that's what them fuckers look like.
Probably a technical.
Nah, it's gotta have a crew cab and a diesel.
Oh, Jeremy.
Anyway.
Insert Russian manufacturer here.
Anyway, that's not gonna go well.
Yeah.
And
But yeah,
especially in
no.
the winter, it's like you want the beard.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. Apparently, Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov criticized the ban on Russian soldiers wearing beards, noting his forces fighting in Ukraine are Muslims and having facial hair is a religious duty.
He has one.
He's got one.
Like
Yeah,
he's
Kadyrov-
kind of got a bit of a Abraham Lincoln type one going on.
Yeah. Kadyrov's comments are the latest outburst against the Russian military leadership as he joined the Wagner Group mercenary chief Yevgeny
The old guy.
Prigozhin
Yeah.
Prigozhin.
Prigozhin. Yeah.
in inventing public criticism. Apparently, a retired Lieutenant General Viktor Sobolev and a member of Russian parliament defended the ban on beards, personal smartphones, and tablets as an elementary part of military discipline.
Okay. Okay. I
you-
get that. I get
see,
that totally.
Now they're cracking down so those Russians don't cry when they're out in the field.
Well, okay, not carrying your personal phone while you're in the military because you're supposed to be focusing on your job. I sort of understand that.
Yeah,
The
it
bigger
could be
part of that
traceable.
is the bigger part of that is actually because they want to suppress the truth. They don't want the soldiers sharing videos of atrocities because then
Yes.
that can be put into the cloud and then that can be used against them at the international
Yeah.
criminal courts. That's the biggest reason.
Yeah.
The funny thing I always wondered is Prigozhin is a very old guy. He is not a military combat tactician. He is not in the front lines right now. He's just the guy in the back pushing all the buttons and switches and moving the chess pieces across the board. How is Kadyrov not the head of the Wagner group? Because he is the pure killer mindset soldier that the Wagner group needs to be their leader, and yet he's not the leader of them.
No,
Kinda weird.
he's just an ally of Putin. at this
Right,
point.
right. But
Yeah,
what I'm saying
well,
is, it's like,
Well, let me finish the rest of this article because there's only a couple more
ahead.
paragraphs. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Writing on Telegram on Thursday, the bearded Kadyrov, who has talked up the role of his troops in Russia's war in Ukraine, wrote, "Apparently, Lieutenant General Viktor Sobolev has a lot of free time since he has nothing to do but rereading the military code of conduct." Kadyrov called Sobolev's comments a clear provocation, saying his mostly Muslim soldiers wore beards as part of their religious duty.
Yep.
Okay, and that's some Muslim sects are like that.
most,
right?
most,
M-
but
most of them, but yeah. Wagner's Prigozhin, whose rift with the defense establishments has become increasingly public in the past week, called Sobolev's comments absurd and archaisms from the 1960s, which is not wrong there. Kadyrov and Prigozhin, whose forces in Ukraine operate largely autonomously of the high command, have become more outspoken in their criticism of the Russian military leadership since Moscow's armies suffered a string of cascading defeats in late 2022. The two men have formed a tacit alliance, amplifying each other's criticisms of the military top brass and calling for a more vigorous prosecution of the war. It remains to be seen how the relationship between the various fighting forces unfold after Russia ordered its top general Valery Gerasimov to take charge of its invasion of Ukraine this month.
Yeah, he did
So.
get the promotion.
Yeah. So that's that article. But I wanted to go over it because I thought, out of all the things that's happening in Ukraine, the most absurd thing the Russian forces are complaining about are the beards.
It's yeah, it's military discipline basically.
They're
They want them to
saying
look a
that,
certain
but
way. They don't want them not to carry certain things because you were there to do a job. You're supposed to look like a professional soldier. But then again, if you think about like operators and people out in Afghanistan, it's like they started growing these things out to blend in a little bit better too. And
Yeah.
sometimes you don't have access to a razor blade. So it's like, you want me to fight a war or do you want me to fucking shave my face? Make up your goddamn mind.
Exactly.
Like you hired me to kill people, not fucking not to compete against Swedish supermodel, underwear model, fucking NATO head Jens Stoltenberg, right? It's like, we're not going for Mr. Universe here. That kind of shit.
Right.
Yeah.
But I just figured it was so ridiculous that I had to mention it because you went over everything else and it's like, you didn't see this one.
Well, it was literally like, here is a hair. Perhaps you would like to split it over at Wagner Group. Yeah, like, what the fuck?
Kadyrov is saying, "You're damn right. I want to split it."
Yeah, he's like, I ain't shaving shit. I will shave your head with this bayonet. I'll start at your throat. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
All right. I want to talk about last Friday, the announcement that the ATF decided once again to move the goalposts.
Oh, you mean the Friday the 13th?
Yes.
2
days before SHOT
Crystal
Show.
Brace ruling.
Yes. Which wasn't published until Monday, but yes, that. Let's talk about that for a second, okay? Question is,
have you heard the latest of it?
Go ahead.
That it's technically a trap.
Of course it is.
No. Even more so that a lawyer looked over the whole thing.
Have you read it?
I read most of it.
I read 293 pages.
Yeah, the lawyer read it and he said there's this particular trap built into the text.
The whole thing is a trap. It's like the whole thing is circular logic.
You're pretty much out. You're pretty much saying, "Oh yeah, I'm technically building an SBR by using a pistol." Pretty much.
So here's the thing. The ATF is a derivative of the Department of Treasury, right? We all know that, just like the IRS is. They are also not a legislative branch. Which means
they keep making rulings on and definitions on things as if they were Congress when we didn't vote them into office.
This gets better. So they're not a legislative branch. They're a derivative of the Department of Treasury, and yet they're trying to unilaterally exempt you from a tax stamp, right? The cost of the tax stamp. The only entity that has the legal authority to waive or levy a tax is Congress, because they control the purse, which means the ATF has stepped on the toes of the judicial system and the legislative branch and Congress, and yet not even Congress is smacking them across the hand going, fucking stop it. Because they're puppets to them also. Who gave the ATF that much authority and that much power to do that, where Congress will not speak out, saying, hey, wait a minute, you're taking away billions in tax revenue on an exemption, on a 293-page dissertation that does not carry the weight of law, that had page after page after page of circular logic, because you have set up an entrapment case saying that you're going to fill out a form for a tax stamp that you don't have the authority to waive the fees of, and entrap people into saying that I already have the SBR before I was granted the stamp. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Everything is a circular thing to fuck
A,
you.
a lawyer went over and mentioned this. They've been talking about it for the last day or two.
Yeah.
Is they went through the text, and basically, as you said right there, they pointed out that by even registering or even telling the ATF that you have a pistol braced firearm, you're
Is an
admitting
admission
that
of guilt
it is an admission that you have an illegal SBR.
before you were
And
granted a stamp for said SBR.
yes,
Right.
and it's also telling them, by the way, you either manufactured or you're in possession of said illegal SBR.
Correct. It's what they're trying to do is they're trying to exempt you for the cart before the horse this one time to get 40 million suckers to willingly register their firearms with the federal government, which is something the federal government is not legally allowed to possess, a federal registry. Now,
Yeah, but they do it anyways.
I've had a tumultuous roller coaster of a week, morally speaking, on this because I don't like why we have this situation we're in where they just decide whatever one week and whatever the next week. It's almost like YouTube's policies. But what the thing I find that's the most insulting is they're getting away with it. Like, first of all, I don't like the fact that we're doing it. And then I watched Yankee do a video the other day, and he was like, well, listen, and this is him saying this, not me. He was like, I already have SBRs. I've already have tax stamps, which means if I apply for a couple more, it's not like I'm adding myself to the radar because I'm already on it. Now, in his case, that makes sense. And he's like,
if
I
you
can,
own NFA items already, then
you're already
go,
on that list
and
of
you
we
have
can come to your
pistol
house once
braced
a year.
firearms, then knock yourself out. Go ahead and
Right.
test the waters.
But guys like, I guess, me or you, who
Me-
don't
me
have
and you.
anything NFA,
Yeah.
if, like he says, hey, look, I've already got NFA items, so I'm already on that. We can come to your house anytime and demand paperwork and all this other stuff and search and seizures. He's right. He's already on that list. So he was like, why don't I take advantage of free stamps and register a bunch of other ones that I could have? And then once I get those stamps, I could take these bullshit braces off and put real stocks on them. And then when
I
they
get
ask,
that.
why did you pull that off? Because it's like, well, because the brace is a stock according to you retards. So I went ahead and got the stock that this brace was designed after. It's exactly the same fucking size. So go fuck
You
yourself.
made me register it.
Right. So it's like, in his case, I completely understand what he's saying. I don't agree with why we're doing it, but I sat down for 3 days thinking, should I do the same thing?
No.
If I had something that I wanted to do a stamp on, I'm like, should I do that because it's going to be $200 less? The answer
I'm
is
not going to.
no.
And I highly recommend against you doing so.
Right. And the answer for me is no. Because at the end of the day, this will die. This will be overturned. They will be smacked down like little redheaded stepchildren.
It's already there's already rumblings in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Exactly. And there's like a mountain of lawsuits just ready to go, right?
Oh,
And it's like,
they're not
even-
ready. They're already filing.
Even if this gets reversed, now you have stamped items. Okay, yeah, maybe you didn't pay for, the stamps or whatever. But now you still have to abide by all the rules of what a stamp is granting you. Meaning, if you want to move it out of state, you got to inform the ATF. If you want to sell it, you've got to inform the ATF that you have it up for sale. And I think you have to what's the word? You have to declass your rifle or whatever. Basically, I want to remove the stamp. I want to nullify my stamp so I can sell my weapon. But to nullify your stamp, that means you have to take off the things that made it an NFA item in the first place and provide proof that you did that. It's like, there's a hassle there. So, not being a lawyer and not being a capitulator, what I would say is if I were in that situation, and I was going to stamp something, only stamp something you have no intention of ever selling. Ever. because then you don't have to worry about the what if I want to sell it thing. Like, make sure this is something you want to keep the rest of your life. If you're in that boat, okay, maybe you should take advantage of this $200 thing. But just remember, if it's your first stamp, you've just signed on the dotted line. You have just done your deal with the devil. And remember, they can come to your house anytime they want, once a year if they wanted to, kick down your door, demand paperwork, maybe even shoot your dog. They have that right. It's part of the stamp.
Oh, they'll definitely shoot your dog, no
So,
matter what.
Multiple times, probably too.
because of all this bullshit, a lot of the YouTube community out there is kind of split on this, you know? We don't like it either. Like, they're saying things like we're saying things. But
Those that have NFA items are saying just go ahead and register, and those that don't are saying don't.
right,
And
have
the
a
lawyer
boating accident.
and the firearms lawyers are saying don't register because it's entrapment.
Yeah, it's none of their fucking business anywhere. Either way.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the Supreme Court versus West Virginia and the EPA. It's like,
Oh boy.
you're a non-elected official. You are a non-legislative branch. You don't have the legal constitutional authority to levy legislation. They've already told the EPA this. Scratch out the letters EPA and put the AFT in the same place. And this is exactly what's going to happen with the Supreme Court within the next year. They're going to do the same thing to them. But the problem is in the meantime, between today and then, this grace period will lapse. 40 million people become potential felons. And who knows how much damage they will do because they will deny an injunction. Anytime an injunction is requested to stop bad gun legislation, it always goes against the gun owner. Every fucking time. So, yeah, have a boating accident. Or you just don't have one. Right? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have one. Well, we said we got this record of you having this SB tactical brace. By whose authority did you get that registry? Because you're not supposed to even have that. Come back with your lawyer and a fucking warrant, asshole. There's that, right? So all these YouTubers are out there saying what side of this they're on. And guys like us are like, I think you all have a pretty good idea what side we're on. But I have a suggestion for you. Because everyone is saying contact your representatives and da-da-da-da-da, right? And there's some merit to that. You can contact your congressmen. You can contact your senators. I wouldn't recommend contacting your senators. Because your senators are going to be useless. Because your senators are part of a Senate that is controlled by the Democratic Party. Which means they can't accomplish shit. They will never have enough numbers to do what they need to do. So don't even bother with the senators. You can try to contact your House of Representatives people, but if they're not on committees or in positions of power, they're kind of useless too. But I'm about to give you a suggestion that nobody so far on YouTube has. So pay attention. Write this down if you have to. You are going to want to contact the state representative of the great state of Ohio. And his name is Jim Jordan. And why is Jim Jordan important? Number one, because he's a congressman. Number two is because he's a conservative. Number three, because he's pro-gun. And first and foremost and most importantly, he is the newly appointed House Judiciary Committee chairman. He is the legal authority on the congressional floor right now. He is responsible for all investigations. The Hunter Biden scandal, the border crisis, Kamala Harris's knee pads, you name it, he's after it. He is looking for fights to get into. This is the fight you need to put on his plate. You need to be blowing up the offices of Jim Jordan's phone and say, you need to smack the ATF down right now. Because they do not have the legal authority to levy legislation against the people. That is not their function. That is not their constitutional right. You need to get on his ass to have a judicial hearing on the House floor and have the head of the ATF brought out in chains or dragged out in them and say, fucking stop it. You don't have the authority. Get out of my face. That is the person we need to be talking to. And it needs to be done right now. Because the clock is ticking. We are down to 115 days, 114 days of the grace period already. We've already lost 6 days. Or 5 days. We have lost 5 days. It was published on Monday. Clock started ticking Monday. If you contact the offices of Jim Jordan right now, he's not going to hear it for weeks because they don't listen to individual calls. What they listen to is numbers. Somebody is going to get your call at the offices of Jim Jordan, and they're going to hear you say what you got to say, but they're going to shorthand really mad about ATF or really likes this, right? And one day they're going to collate this data within a couple of days or weeks from now, and they're going to say to Jim Jordan, hey, we've been getting these calls to the tune of 40 million people saying that you need to talk about this. And he's going to say, talk about what? And he's going to say, these people keep saying that the ATF doesn't have the legal authority to do this, and the clock is ticking, and by the time we were able to collate this data, there's only 75 days left. You need to get on this right now. He will shove aside almost everything he's in the middle of right now because of the timeline and the sense of urgency. He will put the border crisis off to the side a little bit because that is not going away anytime soon. He will probably put some of the Hunter Biden stuff slightly off to the side because he has to, because this has a clock ticking down. Those things do not. That is who you need to talk to. This is the representative that you need to talk to. This is probably the only representative that matters to talk to about this. Except maybe Matt Gaetz, which is the second story I want to talk to you about. Now, do you guys have anything you want to say on this, or are we pretty much on point with this one?
Nah, we beat it to death.
Okay. But I mean, you see what I'm saying, right? If you're going to talk to a congressman,
Yeah.
talk to the one that's actually going to be able to do something. He's the guy. He is the guy. And he's looking for the fights to have to put his name in the history books of being useful on the almanac. This fucker took down the ATF, period, exclamation point. Done, right? Why do I say that? Because I want to show you this goober. Now he looks like, I don't know. I don't want to judge. But this here is Matt Gaetz. He's a representative out of Florida. He's another congressman, representative out of Florida. He was also one of the 6 holdouts that kept Kevin McCarthy from being House Speaker for 5 days. Now, I know his heart was in the right place and he meant well, but being a holdout with only 6 people, you will never be the majority. You can't stop that. And I think he finally realized it, so he let it go. He was granted something. Everybody got something out of that deal to get their vote. So, 2 days ago, Representative Matt Gaetz out of Florida introduced a bill known as House Resolution 374. Pay attention to this one. It was he introduced a bill to eliminate the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, following a controversial ruling that tightens regulations on pistol stabilizing braces. The ATF issued its final rule Friday that will treat guns with stabilizing accessories like short-barreled rifles, which require a federal license to own under the National Firearms Act. Attorney General Merrick Garland said that the ruling enhances public safety, but Gaetz says that it unfairly punishes disabled gun owners and veterans who rely on stabilizing braces to be able to fire with one hand. Gaetz introduced H.R. 374, known as the Abolish the ATF Act, on Tuesday morning in response to the ruling, telling the news that this was the final straw.
You know it's not going to get passed.
It's the symbolism of it. I have a lot of disabled veterans in my district who enjoy pistol shooting and rely on stabilizing braces to be able to engage in the activity, he said in a phone interview Wednesday morning. The recent actions from the ATF essentially allow them to make case-by-case determinations on whether a pistol with a stabilizing brace is legal or an unlawful sawed-off shotgun if he wants them to be. The continued existence of the ATF is increasingly unwarranted based on the actions they're taking to convert otherwise law-abiding people into felons, he says. My bill will abolish the ATF. If that doesn't work, we're going to defund the ATF. And if that doesn't work, we're going to target the individual bureaucrats at the top of the ATF who have exceeded all legal authority in rulemaking. And if that doesn't work, We're going to take a meat cleaver to the statutes that the ATF broadly authorize their actions. According to the ATF, the new rule does not affect stabilizing braces that are, quote, objectively designed and intended as a stabilizing brace for use by individuals with disabilities, and not for shouldering the weapon as a rifle. Such stabilizing braces are designed to conform to the arm and not as a buttstock. However, if the firing arm, where'd it go? This is what happens when I scroll. I hate when I lose my place. However, if the firearm with the stabilizing brace is a short-barreled rifle, it needs to be registered within 120 days from the date of publication in the Federal Register. However, Gates says the people at the ATF are making these rules the people at the ATF making these rules fundamentally don't know anything about firearms. I think they are under the flawed conception that a stabilizing brace increases the lethality or danger of a pistol, he says. It seems the ATF is on a snipe hunt for regulatory action that virtue signals to the anti-gun left, but it has no real practical safety impact on Americans. Gates' bill, which has been referred to the Judiciary Committee, does not have any co-sponsors yet, but he said that there's broad support among Republicans to go after the actions of the ATF. I believe that you are likely to see ATF bureaucrats hauled in before the Judiciary Committee to explain themselves in the coming weeks and months, said Gates, who also sits on that committee. Because we're hearing this very loudly from our constituents, and the reason I filed this bill is, frankly, I think that the ATF should have to justify their existence at all. Bravo, Matt Gaetz, for saying what we have been saying as long as we've been gun owners. And I'm gonna beat on this drum just a little bit longer when I tell you that the ATF is nothing more than government wasteful, bloated spending that have no authority to do what they do. We don't need them anymore. Their acronymic duties are doled out by other bureaus already. Alcohol and tobacco by the Bureau of Weights and Measures. Firearms and explosives already under the jurisdictions of the FBI. We don't need another bureau. You want to talk about saving money in the budget? Imagine how much we could gain by getting rid of the ATF. Or, as somebody very rightly pointed out earlier this week in my chat, the ATF origins began after the Civil War. It's true. Go look it up. I promise you, it's there. But if you want to bring back the ATF to its original founding size, I'm okay with that. Because it was originally founded, I think, in like 1871. I think it was 1871. Maybe it was either 71 or 91. And it was a bureau of 3 appointed officials to investigate the levying or the abuse of avoiding the taxes of alcohol and tobacco across state lines. If you want to bring it back down to 3 people, I can manage. I can live with that. But you won't. Because you like being a gigantic, bloated piece of wasteful spending and authoritarian bullshit. Prove me wrong otherwise. Anyway, if you guys don't have anything to add to that, I'm done.
Nope.
We're good?
Nope.
We're all good. Well, in that case, I'm going to play this. Because we've reached 2 hours and 30 minutes, and I think I've put you guys through enough hell for one night. So anyway, this was the War Room. This was day 331. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. But if you're a regular here, welcome back. Either way, check out my other playlists and see if my other interests might be of interest to you. I do apologize for the lack of major other content updates. I promise. Let me get my stupid truck out of the shop and I'll probably have some more room to breathe. Anyway, if you guys want to join me in the chats throughout the week, the link to join the servers in the description below. You're more than welcome to do that. If you have any ideas for show suggestions or stories for the War Room, I have a channel for that in the server too. Feel free to leave the stories in there because I actually used a few this week. So anyway, we'll see you in 7 days' time for day 338. Slava Ukraini.
Heroyam Slava.
And good.
Shall not be infringed.
Well, you really jumped the gun on that one.
Yeah. I want to go to bed.